going to be beautiful colors. So whatever you're seeing on your camera viewfinder, this is what you'll see, your viewers will see. And that really, builds trust and confidence in your brand, even though you're just using a basic $300 product. And of course, it's much more reliable than software. So this is kind of a diagram that's set up. Again, very basic. Connect a couple of cables. You power it on. It displays the pairing code. You go to Facebook. You enter in that pairing code. You're live. That's it. If you're doing mobile streaming, I would also recommend using something like this, like a dedicated encoder. All you need to do is grab a battery bank and use the hotspot from your cell phone, and you can actually use that to go live as well. So you can use the internet off your cell phone to do a high-quality live production with an actual camera. And this is like all the kit you need to go live from a DSLR camera. So again, very compact, but I guarantee you'll get more engagement, and your viewers will really thank you for using a proper camera instead of a cell phone. Now finally, we have the multi-source setup, and this is what we're using here. So actually, just let's talk a bit about the stream that we're running here. So we have Marta back there with our Pearl 2 product, and we've got it right here. We've got a camera that's taking video of the stage, and we also have the second camera that's capturing video of me right now, and it's doing interviewers as well. We're taking an audio from the booth over there, and what we're doing is we're taking all the video sources into our video inputs, the audio into the audio inputs, and we're able to mix them live and go on the web. So why should you be using an advanced kind of encoder like this? Well, if you've got multiple sources like we have here, you've got event audio, we've got a projector, you have different cameras, and you want to make sure that when you do the event or do the stream, that everything will actually work. Just use a dedicated piece of hardware to do that, where it's all been figured out. And that's basically what we're doing here. So you can take in USB cameras, HDMI, SDI professional cameras, audio mixers, IP cameras, and whatever other video you can imagine. So let me kind of just sum up what we talked about. The best camera is always the one you have with you. So if you want to go live and if your viewers are expecting you, using a cell phone I think is cool, especially for Instagram. If you want to really convey professionalism in your brand and you really want to solidify your brand image, I would really recommend using a dedicated hardware encoder like the Webcaster X2. And if you're doing an event like this, or you've got a professional studio setup, I would really focus on trying an advanced encoder. The other thing I want to mention is, I mentioned this during the last presentation, is don't expect your viewers to just come to you all the time to your one place where you're streaming. Try to reach them. Try to do streams to Facebook, streams to YouTube. At the same time, stream to Periscope. So that's what we're doing here right now. We're actually streaming to, I think, 4 or 5 YouTube pages, about 6 Facebook pages, and I think 4 Periscope users, right? So we're really capturing our audience where they are. We're not expecting them to come to us, and that's going to really drive your engagement, and you'll see, I think, really, really big results from that. So that's it. I hope you learned something new, and let me know if you have any questions about how to go live. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering how, using these tools, how would you then manage things like overlays, lower thirds, picture-in-picture?
It's a very good question.
Talk about a video and show a video.
Very good question. Very good question. So with something basic like Webcaster X2, there is really no overlays. It's like way too basic. With a product like this, like Pearl or Pearl 2, you can actually import overlays. So you can import graphics. You can take in video from your computer, and you can use that as your video source. Software also allows you to do that as well.
So would I manage that from my laptop then, as far as when it goes in and how it looks and all that?
Yeah, so usually the way it works is before the event starts, you preset all your different layouts and all your different kind of scenarios on your laptop. You save that onto your encoder, and then you just switch on the encoder. So basically right here, I have this switching interface, and I just select what shot I want to see right now.
That's as far as interacting with the chat, I just watch on the laptop as it's going.
Exactly, yeah. That's the best thing to do is actually to open the stream itself. First of all, so you know the stream looks good, so YouTube is receiving it properly, and then just monitor the chat and get back to people. Yeah, absolutely. And we run a live show every week, so we do this every week, every Thursday. Sure.
All in for the one camera setup, what do you think that would cost?
So our one camera setup here, if we're using this camera, it's about $200. This is $300, so $500. If you want to use good audio, maybe another $200. So it's maybe $700, like all said and done. If you have good audio and nice camera, maybe another $50 for a light to put on top. So around there. Cool. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and feel free to come up and check it all out and ask me questions. Thank you.
So I hope that was illuminating for everybody. And thanks for taking your seats. We've got
nice to meet you.
a powerhouse
Heard your talk. It's good. Very good. Very good.
I love. So what's this box right here?
The Pearl Mini. Yeah, this is. We're actually just about to ship this product. We just launched it, so it allows you to go pipe in like multiple video signals, and it's an encoder, and go live for like events, and it's like really mobile. So we have one SDI input and two HDMI inputs in the back here. It's not even that heavy. It's not that heavy at all.
Just a quick question. Is anybody in this audience?
Let me switch the stream here for a second.
No? Good. You want to meet one? He's not a rocket scientist either. However, he can hook you up with one because he happens to work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. So he's also an expert in VR production and interactive media, and he's got some very great panelists that are here to talk about the different platforms that are available to video marketers. So please give it up for Ryan Bell.
Hello, I hate being on stage. It's the worst. So today we're going to be talking about like live video, right? I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and this is really exciting for me because I was sitting next to somebody who works on IBM Cloud Video, which is something that we use, and I'm looking at all these things that we can use together. I think it's really awesome. So today we have some amazing folks on this panel, and I think we'll go ahead and bring out Eddie because we already know Eddie Vaca. Eddie, come on, give him a hand. He put this conference together because he likes to be clapped for.
I'm sitting here though.
Then we have Michael Rivo from Salesforce. So, all right, and I don't know this last person.
You don't know him?
No, I'm joking. And Rudy Ellis from Switchboard Live. And we're going to try to blast through this, guys, so that we can like ask some questions, because I think this is because this is really what the crux of the conversation is where to put our content. I think that this is one of the most important conversations of the day. So live video marketing with socials and driving value from your social networks, it's really about platforms. So the first question I want to ask, and I want to not talk as much, is where do you guys find the most value on platforms, especially for a big brand? I'd like to start off with you and give me an intro, and tell them what you do at Salesforce and all that good stuff.
Sure. So hi, I'm Michael, and I work on the Salesforce Live team, which does all the live broadcasting on our Salesforce Live website for Salesforce, in addition to lots of other video stuff across the company. So yeah, the question is, where do we find the most value? What channel? I mean, I think it depends on how you define value. So we look at the different channels, whether it's on our site or on Facebook or on Twitter or other places where we may stream based on what we're trying to accomplish. So you know, on our site, we have a closer relationship with the folks that are there, and we're trying to get them to engage more with Salesforce. And on social, we're trying to generate, you know, more views and interest and try to just drive a larger audience. So I think, you know, without getting into too much detail, I think looking at each channel for what you're trying to accomplish is kind of how we think about it.
A lot of times we try to put onto multiple channels. So this is a good way to segue and talk about what Rudy does. So can you describe what you do and what the value is of going to multiple channels or multiple platforms simultaneously?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Rudy Ellis.
I'm the CEO of Switchboard Live, and we developed a platform that makes it really easy, like Ryan said, for your content to be seen and consumed and viewed on multiple destinations. So whether you're, whether you're a brand or you're a content creator, big or small, you can leverage our platform to do multi-syndication to all your different various social channels. One other key factor is you can actually bring in colleagues that are a part of that event. So if there are sponsors and brands that are a part of your event itself, you're able to leverage their social and their audience as well to create a bigger impact. And at the end of the day, your main goal is to get viewers, right? And so you want to make sure that your content is seen by the right people, and we make it really easy for folks to be able to do that.
Cool. And leading in and making me feel like I know what I'm doing, it seems like we're in the right order. How do we amplify that content on these platforms? Wow, see this conversation? It's flowing.
So you guys may remember me from such panels as webinars earlier this morning. But I'm Eddie Vaca. I'm the founder and CEO of SummitLive. We are a live video distribution platform. We essentially help connect marketers to live audiences in real time. And then we report back on that. So what's the engagement like? How many viewers you got? What's the return on that? We've also built some really slick technology that helps you retarget those folks. So it's not about just getting viewers. It's about continuing that conversation, getting that engagement further down the road. And what we talked about earlier is how do you attribute that back to conversion?
Very cool. So I'm wondering for you, we have different goals. Like at NASA, we want to educate and spread the gospel about whatever we're sending into space. And with Salesforce, you're more tracking your metrics of sales. So how do you go about doing the actual media tracking?
Some of it is focused a lot on that tracking. A lot of it, so for Dreamforce, for example, is open content. We have such great content there and great speakers. We don't want to necessarily gate that, and for us, it's an awareness thing. And so we with that tracking, our key metric there is how many people are viewing, and are we reaching that large audience? When we do want to, this is really one of the challenges right now in working with an audience at all, which is how do you know who's watching, understand what they're watching, and be able to connect with them without having to ask them for their information over and over again, which I'm sure is annoying to all of us. And so I think a lot of the things that we're thinking about is how do we sort of get beyond the gate and understand how to interact with an audience in a way that's more authentic. One thing that we're seeing that works on our website, not just in video, but across the board that's successful is a simple chat function. It's one of the most powerful and successful channels on the website. So you've built all this content, you have all this stuff and all this stuff we think about in marketing, but what's really most important is that one-to-one connection. Somebody has a question, they can reach out and they get an answer back in that real-time conversation. So I think we're not there yet, but I think that's really what the live streaming experience is all about. Is it is real time, feels very one-to-one as you're watching it. You're highly engaged. How do we get it so that it's not give me your email information and maybe I'll send you something that may be relevant? How do we get it so that we're using digital channels to take that conversation to the next level and get somebody who really is interested to interact? And that's something we haven't totally figured out yet, but I think that's a growth opportunity in the industry for sure.
So I'd like to kind of go a little bit off and go back to you, Eddie. And I think a lot about use case scenarios. So how a business or an influencer or somebody else is using your tool. So what is a good use case scenario or an example of something that you've done and you've seen kind of the soup to nuts, how this was built? And
I think we see a lot of different use cases. Like Michael said, Dreamforce is a big awareness play. They want as many people to see the content that they're creating as possible. That's important to them. So it really comes down to the marketer behind the production. Like, what's important for me? Why am I doing this in the first place? Is it the awareness play? And there's some people like Salesforce, Microsoft. There's others in the music space that are putting out these big numbers. I mean, you look at Coachella, 41 million viewers, right? 480,000 concurrents for Beyonce. That was a big awareness play. YouTube did that. And they did a fantastic job at driving people. And what it's doing is sparking that conversation after the fact, right? So that worked. And that was a great branding example right there. There's others that want to drive demand. And with demand comes attribution with its own separate challenges. And it's like, how do we know these people? How do we know that we're reaching them in an authentic way where we're being true to ourselves and trying to capture that data, but also engaging them enough that they're willing to give it to us in the first place? So it really depends on the use case that you're asking for, but I think there's really good examples across the board on what people are doing.
Cool. And Rudy, I've had the pleasure of working with you on a project. It's amazing how these teams are able to attach to a team that's already in play.
Sure.
So give me an example of how you've done that, how you've been like, okay, well, we're going to do this, and I'm just going to be a part of something.
I think there's obviously been a couple use cases for that. One that comes to mind would be Harley Davidson, for example. So they're a partner of ours where their main goal was, hey, we have a product, right? We want to reach a younger demographic. And so let's put the content where people are watching content, right? And so they've used our platform for a number of events, ESPN X Games event, a Mom and Tried event. But the main thing for them is they leveraged, all of their dealership pages that they have globally, right? There's over, I believe, 700 different Harley dealerships, globally. And for them, they wanted to create this, unique distribution strategy to put content that they were producing, putting, money and real dollars behind it in front of the audience. And what better way to do it as by picking a platform like Facebook and then, leveraging all the different micro networks for each individual dealership to have, that relationship with their, local brands and affiliates. And so for them, we kind of, we took that idea and helped them to distribute that, because if you think about it, that would have been, I don't even know how you would have done it. That would have been a nightmare to be able to publish to, so many different, platforms, real time. And then, like Michael said, create that engagement. So if you have a question about a particular bike or product, you're able to chat real time and have that communication with that dealer that's local to you, and then be able to provide analytics, post-event. So that's one that comes to mind, and I think that's, been a really exciting partnership with us with Harley Davidson.
Can you share any numbers around that? Like, how many dealers were there? Because you're talking about the power of syndication here, right?
Yeah, I think, one of the things they did, so the challenge with coordinating that effort, right, was how do you get all of those dealers to sign up and opt into that? So we create what we call a branded stream share page, right? So they put that out to all the dealers. Hey, we have this event. Do you want to be a part of this event? Here's an easy way for you to authenticate your pages. Not just Facebook, but YouTube and Twitter was a part of that as well. But really simple, really easy to be able to do that. And then once that was live, I wish I knew the numbers off the top of my head, but the fact that they were able to go over to 500 and so different dealers, was amazing for them, and now that's a part of their marketing strategy. It's just a different view, because with live, most people have this myopic view that I have to pick one platform and spend all my marketing dollars to say, hey, come watch, or remember to watch at this date and this time. Whereas now it's fragmented, right? You have people consuming live video on different platforms. Why not leverage the audience that you have built to do that? And I think syndications and simulcasting, restreaming, multi-publish, whatever the term you want to use, I think they're all, the matter at the end of the day. It's getting your content in the hands of folks that want to watch it.
But we have to worry about unmoderated chat. So if you're sending to multiple channels, do you focus on one head channel? Like, do you focus on just having somebody moderate Facebook and then directing them there?
Sometimes that is part of it. It's there can be an exact call to action. Like it's great to use that as a platform to get the word out about this particular event. So part of the education. But if you want to participate or be a part of the event, come here, right? And so we've seen that be used in various types of use cases, whether it's a pilot episode or a new car reveal. But if you want to be a part of the actual event, come here and post comments or take questions.
Michael, this makes me think of how big is the biggest thing that you've done with multiple, and not just numbers.
At work, you're talking about?
yeah, at work. Because there's
He's a
Victor
power
right there.
Yeah.
Victor's going to be paying attention at one point. Hey, Victor.
Yeah, way to do that one.
I know. Victor, are you watching a simulcast stream? Yeah.
How many different teams have you used to produce something like that was really big? Like what's the crown jewel of?
Well, Dreamforce is it every year, so it's 4 days. It's we're across 7 different rooms at Moscone, all into a central control room where we're then pushing to multiple streams to various Salesforce properties, various social properties. It's a big production for sure.
How many properties?
So we're doing Facebook, Twitter, 2 Salesforce properties, pushing out over AmpLive for a campaign as well, and then also to, we stream at the same time we can stream to partners. So an IBM, for example, or something like that, and so that about covers it. But so we might have streams going to, I don't know, 6 to 8 different places at the same time. And so what we're doing is we're picking and choosing within the content. So the days are structured with some thought leadership, some products, different stuff, and all of those feeds are coming in real time. And then we're choosing to say, oh, okay, the Sales Cloud, which particular product, Twitter, we will live stream this in addition to on the Salesforce properties. So we kind of come up with a matrix and a strategy of which social channels we're going to use. But what we found was really successful too, and this is, what you clearly get. It's sort of a similar syndication story, but if we can tap into the big names that come to speak at Salesforce and get them to syndicate to their channels or them to tweet and retweet that this is happening now, we get huge. It's a huge part of it. And so now, as part of negotiations, when somebody's going to come and speak, we try to get in there to say, they're doing a contract for Tony Robbins to come and do a 2-hour session. Can we get him to activate his audience? Exactly. So we're trying to make that part of the deal, so that they know that their assistant will be ready to retweet it, that kind of thing. So I think there's a lot more to do there, but the scale of that is incredible. And like you're saying, come to this one place at this one time.
It's tough.
It's not. There's no reason.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to work like that.
Yeah.
I mean, this can happen across all of these different channels. So, which is great. It's also a challenge to be able to manage all that, but it opens up a big audience. So we've seen huge growth in our organic views across the social channels, from digging into the different Twitter and Facebook accounts across Salesforce and activating those influencers on, related to the content that's happening, to drive a ton of viewership.
What's the big impression number for the last Dreamforce, if you can share it?
Yeah, I mean, we had over 10 million views, and that was a combination of paid and organic, and so that's over the 4-day period of the event. So it's we get a lot of viewership for that. Sure.
It's weird when you're dealing with some of these big channels, and then you look at your own social media channel. You're like, it's not even worth tweeting. And what tools do you use to measure your analytics? What do you look at when you're looking at meaningful metrics versus vanity metrics?
Right. I mean, I think that's a great question, and defining what's meaningful and what's vanity before, particularly with your stakeholders, is really important.
What do the stakeholders say? Is it click-throughs?
Well, I think, for an event, for something like a webinar, where you're clearly going after lead generation. So we're going to gate this, we need to capture, we need to know who's here, we need to understand that, and this is driving directly into sales, and that's the conversation that needs to happen out of that. If it's, hey, we're going to broadcast this and try to get as many people to watch as possible, and we're going to put it on all of our channels, and then the feedback that comes back is, how come we don't know who everybody is, and how come we're not generating all these leads off these 10 million views? That's probably the wrong conversation to be happening. And so I think it's thinking about, okay, if this is the start of a relationship with an audience, out of all of these people who come, what is the next step of that conversation? So if you're doing an AmpLive campaign, for example, do you know who they are? What's your strategy to reconnect with that audience? how are you going to use that in the future as part of your, from the top of the funnel on down marketing. So I think it's just important to know, hey, views are the most important, knowing who that audience is at some level and retargeting them. That's the strategy, that's what we want to do, so then you know what you're looking at. But I think clarity around all the stakeholders is really important, because you can be in a situation where you spend dollars and the idea is, oh, we're going to just do demand generation off of a really top of funnel thought leadership kind of thing that's not gated. You're probably not going to be able to deliver on that expectation.
I agree.
Yeah, I was going to say just one quick note to that is if you think about it, just the fact of live and these types of events now, right? That the KPI for a successful event for a lot of times has just been that, hey, it worked, right? And people tuned in, right? And so
right.
And so now when you start adding different layers of that to that, it's you're right. What deems an event a successful event?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's actually that's a very good point, going to your stakeholders and saying, hey, at the end of the event, what is the ROE on this, like return on engagement, like how many people tuned in or watched, or what are you able to do with that data post-event? And those are things that we kind of, would love to figure out. And I think it's, just up here in this group is identifying what those metrics should be and could be, just because of, everyone looks at an event successfully, a little bit different right now, I think.
I mean, you nailed it, right? Like every event is looked at differently, and so is every platform. Is a like equal to a retweet or a share, as opposed to like on an organic view to a distributed view. Like they're very different metrics across all these different platforms, no matter what you're using. So I can't even imagine how your team is looking at this and saying, okay, well, we did this here, but it all comes down and equals this. I mean, platforms are tricky in general. Social is one aspect for it. So am I looking for shares, or am I looking for demand gen? Can I do that on a social platform? Am I looking for demand gen on a distributed paid play, or am I looking for shares on that as well? So I think platforms play a lot into that. I think it really comes down to setting those expectations up front, and then understanding what each platform can do for you.
And I don't think video is necessarily any different than any other tactic. What's the expectation of somebody when they come to an event? What do we want them to do next? Or when they download a white paper, or whatever that tactic is. I do think this is the delta between getting someone to watch and then really knowing who they are and continuing that conversation and being able to get value out of it. I think that's what everybody who does this hasn't really figured that out yet. There are moments of clarity, but there's a lot of confusion in there and stuff dropping along the way until it gets to sales and so forth. So I think there's innovation that can happen there around how video is presented and how the engagement in the digital space that maybe I think if you think about the social channels and what they know about us, they're doing that really well. And are we doing that? How can we get some of that kind of intelligence in more of a B2B type environment?
Well, that also goes into what are the platforms willing to share with you, right? Because all of these are closed wall.
Right.
They're all closed gardens.
Right.
They're not going to share anything that they don't have to with you. And
Right.
Therefore, yes, I can put money in, but I'm not necessarily getting value out. And how do you kind of leapfrog that into something that says, hey, I want to put value into Facebook, but I also want to extract it at the same time. I just can't imagine, I can't imagine personally, the amount of time that we spend on Facebook, but in order for us to play or even continue to play at this point, how much we have to pay to do it. We put money into Facebook all the time. And to me, it's kind of a black hole. I don't get enough of that insight back to keep doing it.
I agree. So the way that we work at NASA is when we have a live video, we'll do it to YouTube, and that'll be kind of the head, and somebody will be moderating that channel. And Facebook, we won't. Then we'll also have Ustream, because that's a quick turnaround, and we're able to give that to the press immediately, because YouTube takes forever to render and process and all that jazz. But the metrics are so important because we're looking at engagement. So how long somebody is watching a stream, and that metric for us is on YouTube. We have like 12-second watches on the really short ones, and then we just did one that had a 14-minute average watch on an hour long, and I was like, thank you, people, you're listening, you know. But Facebook is just a bunch of looky-loos. I feel like that's been very vanity metric lately.
Well, it just goes into the way they distribute, though, right? They think they know you, so they drop it into your timeline, and you're thumbing through that thing.
Yeah.
And if you just happen to stop and read it for a second, they're going to call it a view. I think this goes into kind of like the chaos that is these platforms, the hairball that it becomes. It's going back to a share equals a like equals a share. Does it? It doesn't necessarily, because a 3-second view doesn't give me any more value than someone that just skips right through it. But they're going to report on it.
I mean, yeah, the disparity between that. So on Salesforce Live, somebody comes and watches Keynote. We get average view times that are 45 minutes.
Right.
People are genuinely interested and they watch the whole Keynote.
Yeah.
You know? So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And so we might have a few thousand people that are watching at that level. But then, and so that goes as a view in the view column. And then you've got someone watches on Twitter for 4 seconds. That's also a view in the view column. Totally different. But they each have their purpose, which is the value of I am scrolling through this and, oh, hey, Dreamforce is happening in Salesforce. Oh, right, is a thing. You know, that's worth something.
Yes.
We just don't quite know what it is. So, it's, when you think about the platforms versus what's happening on your own site with a much more dedicated audience, it's a really different experience.
We have time for me to do one more pass, because I feel like there's going to be questions out here, and if there's not, I'll just fill up dead space with song and dance or something. But I don't know if you guys can tell, but I completely lost track of the conversation
that's when we all
time
get up and
ago,
walk off.
and just was like, I'm really interested in this. So the one question that I still like that's left in my notes is, how do you reuse live content? Because I think we miss that. I think I miss that all the time. I think that there's ways to reuse the live video that we've got going on right now. So are there smart ways that you guys have done it, or you guys have seen other people do it, that I can steal? Please.
I'll take a shot at it. So no, we haven't personally at AmpLive, but live is great because it records what we call these like magic moments, things that happen organically on stage between some people, a breakout dance by a moderator. Those are moments that you can reuse. Those become evergreen content down the road, and you can use that live content to snip and push out to socials. Right. You can use it to create explainer videos. You can use it for all kinds of things. It's one of the very few aspects of live, or any vehicle for that, any marketing vehicle, that you can take something and then create something totally brand new with. So I'm a big proponent in using your live video to further that conversation. Hey, you might have missed this. Actually, Salesforce does this really well, where they take segments. It was a product demo. They'll cut that up and send it out to, you might have missed this, to their product email list. Or it's a Sales Cloud webinar. They send that out to their sales during like a Dreamforce, During a Dreamforce, they have a lot of content. They will segment all that content and then, hey, you might have missed this, and bring them back into that ecosystem. Super smart, super smart.
So the guy at NASA is the least intelligent person on the panel. That's great.
Yes.
Well, you got Throwback Thursdays, and like you said, hashtagging in case you miss it, your libraries, right? There are things that you can go back and leverage and then use those as your content, right? So not just with those moments, right? Yeah. But it's an easy way to do that as well. So
I mean, we have such an advantage of having so much great live content and high production value, and they being the people kind of the team is some of my team back there. Thank you guys. You do a great job with this of even real time during a live event of a moment happens, snip out a piece and retweet that quickly, and that might drive back to your live broadcast. Yeah. So just being able to this is a tools thing, which is to be able to do it without having to open up an editing program and do, you know, how can you find ways to quickly be able to just snip little pieces out and go. But yeah, we end up with a treasure trove of content. So a couple different things we do are those kind of snippet type pieces, and then at Dreamforce, beyond the high production value big keynotes, we also capture about 1,000 hours of breakout content of sessions like this, and we find that those are really they're powerful. They get, you know, so those are all on demand. They're hard to find, and you know, that's just a sort of a web issue for us. But if we can get people to engage in that content, it's highly valuable, and those become really good leads and prospects. So what we've done is package those up in kind of trails of content where, hey, here are the 5 best breakout sales cloud, you know, sales focused sessions from Dreamforce. And then you can gate that and you create campaigns to drive people back to that content. You know, couldn't attend Dreamforce, here's the 5 best sessions. And then the value exchange for, oh, I'll give my information for that. You know, would it cost me X to go to Dreamforce, but I'm going to get this. Okay, now I'll give my information. And so I think that's how we're reusing. That's not necessarily live content, but event content.
It's also being authentic to the audience and saying, hey, we're curating this for you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, here's the 5 best. So you don't have to do anything but open this email and give me your name.
Exactly. So that's a great tactic for an email follow-up, even to people who attended. You know, couldn't see everything. You know,
what about the guest speakers? Do they ask for any of their content? Sorry, Ryan.
No.
Like, do they ask for like their segments to be, whether it's part of their catalog or?
You know, surprisingly, they don't ask for that as much. They sometimes.
You should put that as a carrot. Like, yeah, you can. This is another thing that you get as a speaker. You can.
Yeah, and hey, share this with your, you know.
Yeah. That's the power, right?
Exactly.
The power of live. The power of these influencers have such, you know, micro networks, and being able to tap in and getting your content in front of them, I think it's a gold mine. So I'm just curious.
Well, with the
Thanks
syndication
thanks for the idea.
Right? The syndication piece, if you push this to 500 Harley, does it also archive it to their Facebook page?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So they're
getting it.
There's a throwback to that as well. So
When you guys first started talking about that, I was thinking about all the people with huge numbers that don't have time to tweet and that's going to sit there on somebody's page for such a long time in so many instances. So that's awesome. Anyways, we're running really short on time, and I want to get any questions because if I was out in the audience, I would definitely have hella questions.
What's the question you would ask,
using it,
Ryan?
Huh?
What question would you ask?
What questions would I ask? Let's see. I've still got a list.
Okay.
But
we won't go.
You told me to give 10 minutes, Eddie.
You now have 7.
Do any of you have programs for targeting social influencers, and what components does that program consist of?
Actually, we have a really cool one at NASA. It's called NASA Social, and we do that at every facility. So when there's a launch or a landing, we will put it out there for people to sign up, and we will get all these influencers' information and put them on a spreadsheet, which I love spreadsheets. Who else? No. You're weird. Put your hand down. Spreadsheets are awful.
Should have it in Salesforce.
We actually should. And we'll go through and we'll find the influencers that we think are going to make a good community, and we will bring them out to places that only like Congress can go to. You know, just these amazing places. And so our last one was the Insight launch, and one of our photographers that we brought on, his name's Andy Fortson. He was the Instagram photo of the day, and he got 1.2 or 1.3 million likes on that.
Wow.
And it was just like, we had so many wins. Chris Bosch was there, and everybody said, wow, you're tall. And I'm like, don't say that, that's stupid. But it was an amazing thing.
He is pretty tall.
He's so tall.
Yeah.
But I didn't say that to him, I didn't. So that's a wonderful program, but we give them something that's so special, and we know that we can't pay them. We can't. We're taxpayer funded. So these people come out and take a day, or in this case, they took like 2 days off of work to do that. But look up that program. It's been around since it was actually called a Tweet Up, and it was before Meetup. We were going to title it and brand it Meetup. But yeah, it's at NASA Social. I'd love to rebrand it again because I think NASA Social is a little outdated. Kat, oh, you're giving me the 5 minute.
Just to prove I was paying attention.
Thank you.
So my question is, you have all this data from these different platforms. How do you aggregate it and create that compelling story that talks about the success based on the measurements you've put together?
It's a good one.
For your higher-ups.
For my higher-ups. So ours are launch-based. So let's go to Insight versus GraceFO. Insight is a Mars mission. GraceFO is an Earth mission. People don't care about Earth. Really, people? So anyways, so we have to tell the story, and we have to tell it without vanity metrics, because our bosses are super smart and super on top of it. So I can't just say, look at all these impressions. We give them the, so we go into Twitter analytics, and we pull them, we use Sysomos as a tool for cross-platform so that it can show you know, all the waves, and then the funny buzzy word charts and all that stuff. But the real numbers come from the actual platforms themselves. So we can do screenshots, and then we can do a big presentation on PowerPoint. So we're hitting YouTube, we're hitting Sysomos, we're definitely hitting Facebook and all the metrics there, and Twitter Studio. And then we're going to like newspapers.com and finding how many headlines we've gotten. Like for Insight, we had headlines from all over the world, from Taiwan, from wherever. It was pretty amazing, and I cannot wait for landing for that. So we put all this together, and then we're able to use that as well. So Cassini was last year, and every time I talk about Cassini, I start to cry because I love Cassini, and we just submitted it for an Emmy for the Television Academy. So we used all those metrics to submit that project, the death of a beloved robot. So next, please.
One quick thing I'd like to add is when we work with partners, we do kind of the same thing, especially if you're going to the multiple platforms. We'll pull the analytics from all the APIs, but we'll also do some additional analytics as well, where if an event's an hour long and there are chat messages, we'll do like velocity, so that you can go back and see in time, hey, at the 2-minute mark or 5-minute mark, there were more messages or more hearts or thumbs up or likes or smiley faces, so that you can go back and kind of see that this is where, at least based off of just this kind of velocity element, people were more engaged, right? And so those are things that I think could be, obviously key in mind as well when you do have a multi-platform approach as well.
I think that there's a lot of value in having somebody external as well,
yeah,
pulling those numbers, because when you're asking from your team's like trying to justify what they've done. Sometimes that story might not be 100%.
AmpLive, we're talking about benchmarking. So how does your distribution stand up to content that's similar to yours? So music festivals, how does that look? We don't have multiple platforms to go to. We are the platform. What we have are lots of the same types of live streams. So we can give you insights on how you're doing against others. Was your content engaging? Was it not? And how you rank across your peers in the streams that you're pushing out. So benchmarking for us is going to be really important in this coming year, because it's really going to tell that story of not just how well you're doing, but how well you're doing across your peers in live streaming. So that's what we're working on.
We have time for one more question, kind of. Anybody got a quick anything?
Awesome.
Song and dance time.
Whew. Yeah. Nah, I'm not singing and dancing. Thanks, guys. Everybody give it up for Michael, Rudy, and Eddie, please.
That would have been the song and dance, actually. That was it. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, guys. We are getting ready for the next panel. So just a show of hands here, since we're on the topic of platforms, how many people are live streaming to Facebook currently when they do live streams? How many to Twitter? How many to another platform that is neither of the, oh, sorry, I forgot YouTube. How many are doing YouTube? That's interesting. So just looking around the room, it's, kind of even across all three. How many are using AmpLive or another platform that's not purely social? No, really, Bright Cove? You are? Yeah, so a little bit less. I'm interested, Eric, in your opinion. Eddie brought up a really good point. When you're using an external platform, a social platform, where data is the payment for using the platform, you're not able to really get all the metrics that you want. In your experience, how important is that for your clients?
Put me on the spot here. Yeah. By the way, I'm Eric Ducker. I'm out of Bright Cove. I work out at the San Francisco office. Live is interesting. So we have two sides of our business. We have our publishers, so the big media companies who are really leveraging Bright Cove as a distribution platform as opposed to how do we find value in using your platform. It's stability and reliability. But we also have a big presence on the brand side. So a lot of what we talk with our clients about is less about engagement. How do you get conversions? How do you prove that live stream was effective? I think engagement is something that it's our first metric as all video people in this room. Engagement was the first metric to prove effectiveness of our content. And I think we need to start moving beyond that conversation. So putting a call to action on that page, when people are using Bright Cove, they're posting to social, but they're also putting up a landing page for that video to live on, and they have ultimate control of that entire experience. And so putting calls to action on the page or downloadable content or chat function, anything where you're able to go beyond, hey, they viewed 45 minutes. I think Mark said it right. When someone's on your page, they're gonna watch the video. That's a guarantee. It's what are they doing beyond watching that video that proves that they're interested in your content and proves that they're interested in maybe making a purchase. And so that's really what we talk to our clients about is how do you go beyond the video box and get people to take action based on the content they're watching.
This is why I put you on the spot, because you make perfect segues for me for the next speaker. So, we were talking about metrics. We were talking about what is actually true and what is vanity, what is like good to tell your boss, but if they're on it, they may call you on it. And, there's a difference between letting the live stream go and just keeping it up on your screen versus being truly engaged with it and trying to find ways to act on it or showing that you're moved by it. So our next speaker, told me in a previous conversation that he is obsessed with the way things work and how people tick. And one of the ways that he expresses that is trying to find all the different ways that they are sharing data from the planning of an event to the event actually happening to what they do afterwards. So he's here now to share all of this knowledge with you so that you're coming away with an idea of what are the good metrics to have? And actually, more than that, what are the metrics that you have that you can actually act on to make these events better? So please join me in welcoming Ronnie Higgins from Eventbrite.
Thank you. All right. How's everyone doing? Doing good. I'm really excited to be here today and talk to everyone. Before we start, I wanted to ask the room, how many of you host events? Raise your hand for me. A lot of you. Awesome. Well, for those who do host events, I'm hoping that I can show you a lot of interesting ideas that will inspire you to maybe up-level your event game. And for those who don't host events, maybe even inspire you to start hosting some. At Eventbrite, our mission is to bring the world together through live experiences. It's a really ambitious goal, and one of the ways that we are on our way to accomplishing that is by helping event creators and event marketers leverage their data and understand how much value it has to them. What you're looking at here is the Eventbrite Organizer app. It is the only product shot I'm going to show you, I promise. Event organizers use this to understand how their events are doing, sales-wise, but also, too, to find out how well their events are doing, their event promotions are doing, how many of their most valuable attendees have signed up to go to their event, and more. From registration and ticketing technology to web analytics to social media insights and event app data, event creators are sitting on a wealth of data, an abundance of data. In fact, 81% of event creators said that it's important to collect data so that they can create better events and realize the full potential of their ROI. But at the same time, only 20% say that they're effectively using their event data today. It's a huge opportunity for people who are hosting events. Which is why today I want to talk to you about the many ways that you can use your event data, and more specifically, I'm going to talk about 4 ways. First, we're going to talk about how you can use your event to promote your events, your event data to promote your events more effectively, how to win sponsors using your event data, how to meet and exceed your attendees' expectations, and then evaluate your success and plan for the future. We'll start with promoting your events. For those of you who host events, on a scale from 1 to 10, one of you tell me how easy is it to promote an event? Somebody, give me a number. 5. Anybody want to argue with that? 7. That's hard. You're not alone. In a survey of 1,000 event creators, 87% listed their greatest challenge was reaching new attendees. 89 said they wanted to find new attendees. And 88% said that they were facing increased competition. Long story short, promoting an event is not easy. This actually is a challenge for small events and large events. Take the LA Auto Show, for example. By all measures, the LA Auto Show is a success. People come from around the world to watch the top car and auto manufacturers unveil their latest and greatest. But up until a couple of years ago, they were really missing out on a lot of insight about their attendees. The challenge was that over half of their attendees were showing up the day of the event to pay cash to go into the event. Without that data or understanding who was buying by purchasing online, they had no idea where their audience was today and where it was going tomorrow. So, for their 110th anniversary last year, they upgraded their ticketing technology with the goal of increasing sales online so that they could get a clearer picture of who was attending the show. And instantly, they were able to find out things like when and where people were purchasing tickets to the show, who was attending, and not just who was attending, but which of those attendees were their most loyal. And by most loyal, we're talking about the lifers, the people who have gone to 4, 5, 6. Maybe there's one that went to all 110. Who knows? But they didn't know. But as soon as they switched their system, they were able to get this information in real time. And by getting it in real time, as you might guess, they were able to start creating really targeted campaigns to the people who would attend the event, so they wouldn't be wasting money showing ads to anybody who might be interested but might not ever go to an event. And they were able to change their direction with each new piece of data that showed up. What happened was they were able to increase their online sales by double digits, but more than that, they realized there was an untapped opportunity. Over half of their attendees that were purchasing tickets online were younger than any of their assumptions. They realized there was a new, younger generation of automobile enthusiasts that were willing to pay money in advance and they could learn more about them. So I could talk about event promotion probably until you're really bored of me and wish I would go away. So I'd like to actually move on to talk about how your event data is the currency that helps you win event sponsors. Event sponsorship is a billion-dollar industry, 62.7 to be exact, and its rate of growth has actually surpassed advertising and other forms of marketing like public relations. But what are they buying? It's a common misconception that sponsors purchase assets like a banner placement or a mention on stage. But what sponsors are actually purchasing is access to your attendees, aka their customers. But like event sponsorship, like event promotion, sponsorship isn't easy. 90% of event creators also listed securing sponsors as their greatest challenge this year. I want to introduce you to Abby Clements. Her job is to introduce brands to events through sponsorship, and she's really good at it. Not too long ago, an established event that had been around for 30 years reached out to her for help. This event had the same sponsors, big major corporate sponsors, for the entire 30 years. But recently, when they tried to increase sponsorship revenue and reach out to new sponsors, nobody was calling them back. The reason it turned out was a limited understanding of their audience. So Abby dug into their event data, looking into their attendees to find out segments based on their demographics, their geography, their education level, relationship status, income, a lot of data points that they could pull from the data collected from event registration, web analytics, and social media insights. What Abby was able to do was create different segments that would be valuable to potential sponsors. For example, 2/3 of their audience were married, had at least one child, and just happened to be in the market for a new vehicle. So suddenly, car manufacturers were a potential sponsor, something that the event hadn't even considered because they were nowhere near the automobile or vehicle market. In the end, what Abby was able to do with her client was they signed 3 new sponsors that year and increased sponsorship revenue by 50%. Since then, because this is a few years ago, they've continued to diversify their sponsorship offerings, bringing in sponsors big, small, from all kinds of different industries. And to think all it took, just looking into the data, finding out how valuable it was to their sponsors. The next thing that I want to talk about is how to meet or exceed your attendees' expectations. And another question for you guys. How many of you attended a live event last year? Okay, looks like, yep, matched our survey. So last year, 78% of Americans attended a live event. It's 4 out of 5. Majority of Americans have an increased interest in going to live events. This increased interest, matched with the increased competition that I discussed earlier, poses a problem. If you want to host an event that meets or exceeds attendee expectations, you have a huge problem on your hands. You need to figure out, what is it? You can make some guesses, but you're not always going to be right. So why does the attendee experience matter beyond competition? In a survey of Americans 18 to 35, 73% said that live events were the best way to show other people what they're most interested in. 75% of them said that participating in a live event was more impactful than taking action online. And 3 out of 4 said that events were the ultimate form of expression, and that experiences definitely trump things. But meeting and exceeding expectations is not easy, like the other challenges that I've discussed. But luckily, there's ways that your event data can help you sort of look into a crystal ball and figure out how can you meet or possibly exceed them. Take event apps. Mobile event apps have become part of live events and more of a standard these days. They create a wealth of information. You can look at content consumption, session bookmarking, topic discussions, and an activity feed. Take, for example, let's say with this one, you have a keynote speaker. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of activity about this person's recent acquisition that's poised to disrupt the industry. Well, with that information in mind, you can go to your keynote speaker and let them know, hey, everybody wants to know. They're going to ask you a lot of questions in the Q&A session. Can you be prepared? Another way you can do it is imagine there's a session that you might have thought was going to be okay. It actually came in at the last minute. But all of a sudden, people are bookmarking that session. Catches you by surprise. That sort of insight can actually allow you to maybe give that person a better time slot or a bigger room if you have multiple rooms. But you don't need an event app to get this sort of data. In fact, you can find similar signals in your web analytics and social media insights. Take, for example, your web analytics. Visits to a session page or a bio for one of your speakers can tell you just as much information as bookmark sessions. And social media chatter can give you a lot of insight that you can pass off to that keynote speaker. But if you do offer an event app, there's one thing I want to warn you about. Do not count downloads and installs. You want to count active users. Why? Because it doesn't matter how many people have downloaded your app. The event data that's captured by mobile apps is only as good as the people who engage with it. You need them to be bookmarking sponsors, talking to other people who are going to the event. Otherwise, just a little square on their home screen, that's all. The way you can do this is by investing time, not just money, but time and resources, making sure that you have event staff that are seeding posts, talking to your attendees, engaging with them. Encourage your sponsors too. Encourage your speakers to speak in the event app and create a lot of activity in there to make sure that people are using it. So we talked about how your event data can help you promote your event. We talked about how it can help you win valuable event sponsors. And we talked about how data from either your event app or web analytics and social media insights can help you meet or possibly exceed the expectations of your attendees. But if you host multiple events and not just one, there's ways your event data can actually help you not just evaluate your success, but plan for the future. So let's take this example. Your event is ended. Your speakers, your sponsors, and the attendees have all packed up and gone home, and you have an opportunity to evaluate how your hard work paid off. Now, obviously, calculating your bottom line is a priority. But there's more than just calculating that bottom line to measuring your success. Take new versus returning attendees. It costs 6 times more. 6 times more to promote to a new attendee than it takes to bring back a retaining attendee. So if you have more new attendees, now obviously if it's your first event, you're going to have all new attendees. But from then on, if you have more new attendees than returning attendees, it's an indicator that maybe something's not resonating. Your promotions are way better than your actual event. Well, your event data can actually help you understand maybe why people aren't returning. Take post-event surveys, which capture sentiment from your attendees. Or if you have a mobile event app, session and speaker ratings that capture sentiment in the moment. You might find that people who attended a session might have, the title of it wasn't right. It wasn't what it promised. Or maybe a speaker wasn't great. I don't know if you want to say it about me, it's okay. But one thing I would tell you to do is, if you're going to look at this data, to analyze the new versus returning separately, because the variations in their sentiment could tell you a lot about what's working and what's not working about your event. But be careful. Data can be a little weird, where you tend to look at one piece and you say, oh, this is what's wrong. But when you look at some other pieces of data outside of maybe your post-event surveys and your session ratings, you can actually find out a little bit more. So let's say the morning of your event, barely half the people showed up for your keynote speaker. Was your keynote speaker not worth the price? Maybe. But when you cross-reference it with the people who attended the cocktail mixer the night before, it might let you know maybe to host a cocktail mixer on the last day of the conference instead. Another way that your event data can help you after your event is over is by literally helping you with your next move. That's something that Kat Gordon did. Kat Gordon is the founder and director of the 3% Conference. The 3% Conference started in 2012 with the mission to diversify and promote equality in the advertising and marketing industry. And in 2015, Kat started to notice something in her event data. She noticed more than half of her attendees were traveling all the way from New York City to San Francisco for the event. To her, this was an opportunity. Madison Avenue is on New York. That meant maybe if she moved the conference from San Francisco to New York, she could grow attendance and accomplish her mission and bring more inclusion to her industry. She's since used that data to expand. She sees where people are coming from across the world, and now she hosts these little mini-cons in cities around the world, in different countries. So we got a lot of time here to talk, and I just want to know, what will you do with your event data?
Is that the cue for questions, Ronnie?
That is the cue for questions.
Right.
Like I said, I went over a few things here, especially to event promotion. I probably could talk for 3-4 hours about that, and you would get bored with me. So
I just wanted to make a quick comment about that slide prior to this. We actually used to live stream the 3% Conference when they were here in San Francisco. Thanks for moving them to New York, because now we don't live stream them anymore. But they're actually moving from New York to Chicago.
Yep.
So they're splitting the difference. They're now in the middle of the country, and they're going to see what happens then.
Yep.
So my, one thing that struck me as you were speaking is that there seems to just be a lot of untapped knowledge that event planners are maybe not agile enough yet to take advantage of. A lot of what you talked about was stuff that you may learn just in the process of planning an event. So from your perspective, how important is it for an event management company or any kind of production company, for that matter, to be agile and be able to pivot very quickly?
It's very important. There's lots of times where event creators will spend way too much money on, say, a marketing or advertising platform because they just see ticket sales coming in. But if they were to split the difference and test out other places, so say an event that typically puts all their money into Facebook, they might spend just a little part of their budget to find out, all right, well, maybe LinkedIn, let's try that out. And that small little bit of budget, they don't have to wait until the event is over. That stuff's coming in at real time. And if they have something like the event organizer app, they're finding out in the moment how well those ads are performing because they can see the source of sale. So being agile means that you can actually increase the ROI of your event promotions, but also, too, you can sort of find out maybe who your attendees are. The example in the LA Auto Show, they were able to understand their audience that they didn't know a lot about in real time. As things were happening, as their on sale was happening, they were able to find out and pivot, change the messaging to be more effective.
Right. So, I mean, again, this is a theme from last panel to this is understanding what data is important and being able to act on it quickly and make the case for it based off of the data.
Very much so.
You're an event planner. I hear this all the time from event planners who are anxious about live streaming their event. Is it true that when you live stream or broadcast an event, that less people attend in person?
It's actually patently false.
Thank you.
Yes, I don't have the statistic on me, but wish I did. Actually, live streaming an event increases ticket sales. It's been shown through a few studies. We've proven it, and we've proven it with partners. So yes, I wish I had this statistic because the number is impressive.
30%. 30%? Here's how I'm reusing...
With the assist, 30%.
Here's how I'm reusing the live video from this event. I'm going to tweet this quote on my Twitter feed. Any other questions from the audience?
I have one. Hey, Ronnie. Eddie from AmpLive here.
You may know him from such panels as...
I'm very curious about this. How much data do you need to run through the system before you actually, the insights become valuable to you?
So complicated question depending on what your goal is. Like if your goal is the size of your audience, your essential audience. Like so if the capacity of your room, you're obviously, if hundreds, the top capacity, obviously a smaller sample of that, you would need a smaller sample size. But even with just say an email list of your previous attendees, you can use Facebook Insights to create lookalike audiences, and they have numbers on how valid that would be, how statistically valid that is. But you can use that data to find out, not just to use their platform to advertise to Facebook users, but also to gain insight. You might find out, like Abby's client did, that there were people who were in the market for certain products or services. Larger event is more complex. So say a conference that takes people who are in sales, but salespeople might come from pharmaceuticals, they might come from software, all kind of different people with different problems. So when it comes to that sort of size, you might need more data, and the number is going to be different depending on how big your event and more complex it is.
Recommend a sample size of like 10%, 15% of what your attendee goal is, or if you look at it as attendee, number of attendee, or like sponsorship dollars wanting to earn?
You look at it both. Depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to seek out more sponsors, you want to get a sample of pretty much your whole audience because that's how you find out the different segments that might be valuable. So analyzing that entire thing. But if you're trying to promote, it depends on, so say there's a lot of people coming from LinkedIn and your LinkedIn ads are performing really well. It's the same thing with most data-driven marketing. You can just take that one little morsel, even though it's not a lot, you might have just had a better ROI, and you start putting more money into that and doing variations there. So for the example before of someone who might have done all Facebook marketing before for their event, that takes a little small portion of their budget to test out on LinkedIn marketing. they might see a positive return, and then they just start taking a little bit of more money and allocating it to that LinkedIn budget, testing out variations in how they promote the event. And also, too, because of the data, the more segments that you can do, you can actually change the message to be more personalized, too. So an event like this, you heard from a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds, and I'm sure that reflects everyone here who comes from different companies. You might have been more interested in speaking to one person than another. Well, with your event data, you can actually send 2 separate messages to those people.
Any other questions? This side of the room is very quiet.
I said I could talk for hours about event promotion. I'm surprised.
You want to prove that statement? I'm just kidding.
Well, another thing, too, that I want to bring up that's really important that I had in here but I decided to take out is that the reason why you want to leverage your event data instead of a form that asks 1,000,001 questions about your attendees, studies have proven that each step in your purchase process, so every little thing that someone has to do to sign up for an event, 10% less transactions. So if you want to increase attendance, go through your own registration process and ticket purchasing process to make sure that people can purchase a ticket as fast as possible, because then you will increase the amount of attendance.
And don't ask them to take like a 50-item survey.
It's fine if it's
after they're doing
really important. If it's really, if that's more important to get that data, then you can. But by all means, it is going to reduce the amount of people who will sign up.
Is there any best use cases on how many fields you should have on your event form?
I would say a handful is your best. Yeah, handful being literally 5. I would keep it under that. In fact, the less you can ask, think about what data you really need. Your web analytics are going to tell you who's visited your site. Your social media analytics are going to tell you who's your loyal followers. You're going to get information about their demographics, firmographics from those sources. So you don't really need to use, hey, what is your job? Or what industry do you work in? Now, if you want a cleaner answer to those questions, by all means ask it. So if you really want to, say you're doing an ABM event, those data sources aren't going to tell you specifically whether or not people attending your event are your white whales.
So going back to the amount of agility and the amount of analysis that it takes to get to your ideal state of being reactive and being able to pivot, how big or small of a team does it take? Because it does sound like a lot of work, and I imagine that people here with maybe smaller organizations may be saying, well, that's all well and good if you're Microsoft or Salesforce, but we're a 12-person team. How do we scale that?
You'd be surprised how small teams are. There's some people who, Salesforce is not a large team. CAT is her and a handful of people. Event promotion, planning, it's a lot of hard work, but with the tools that you have today, it can be just you, MozCon, just one person doing their promotions. LA Auto Show has a little bit larger team, but that's a huge event. I mean, it's 10 days long, so it's almost like a theme park in a way. But you really don't need a big team. In fact, there's technology, Tone Den, if you're into social media marketing, will take your event data and build lookalike audiences, and as ads are performing and underperforming, will iterate, and their machine learning will figure out which ones are working for you. So it's like hiring 5 or 6 people. So there's lots of technology out there that you can leverage that will help you do a lot more with less. In fact, I recently we did a survey to find out that in 2018, I would say, I can't remember the exact number, it was like 80% of people or events plan to host more events, but the same number, around 40% of them said that they were going to do it with the same size team. And these teams, they said, were anywhere from 2 to 4 people. So if you think you're forced to do a lot with less, you're not alone. Luckily, you have event technology to help you do, a lot of good things for your event and make smart decisions too.
Awesome. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you very much, Ronnie.
Well, thank you.
Looks like we've got some time for a 10-minute break. What do you say, Michelle? Yeah, so take some time, stretch your legs, grab some coffee, and we'll see you back here at around 5 to 3. All right, I think we're just about ready to begin the next panel. So if you're in the room, have a seat. And if you're outside the room, I hope you can hear me because you're about to miss out. All right. So we've talked a little bit about this little intimate event that happens every year called Dreamforce. And raise your hands if you've actually physically been to Dreamforce. It's like everybody in San Francisco. San Francisco is Dreamforce for 1 week of the year. Raise your hand if you've ever watched any of the live streams and from the desktop of your computer at work. Again, that's everybody. All right, so our next speaker is largely responsible for getting us all smarter and less productive for that 1 week of the year. He formerly ran the video strategy department over at Salesforce. He is now embarking on a solo career as a consultant. So please put your hands together for Victor Hazeman.
Hello, everyone. So what she really meant is that I'm the one that's standing out in front of Masonic, or in front of the conference center, sort of blocking traffic. That's what she really meant. But let's get into everything. So I'm really excited today because we've got 3 great leaders who are going to help us hack and think about content creation, going from the development of video all the way to demand. So if you're here, everyone gets the power of video and how you can use it to engage. But there's tons of questions that I'm sure we all have. Here are a couple that I thought about. Do we all need to become media companies now? Where does streaming fit into our overall content strategies, and how do we measure the success? How do we get our video content seen by our target audiences? And how do we make that happen when there's so many other platforms and companies producing content across YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the likes? Our esteemed panel today has been thinking about this long and hard, and they're going to help us hack this. So without further ado, please put your hands together for Kyla Bongiovanni, Senior Digital Marketing Manager at Microsoft. Marissa Cranis, Director of Social and Content Marketing at Salesforce. And Rebecca Stone, Vice President, Integrated and International Marketing at LiveRound. Have a seat. Thanks so much for participating and being here. I want to get right into things. And where I want to start actually is to take 2 steps back. What kinds of live content are you, how are you using video today, and how does it fit into your overall content marketing plans? Kyla, you want to start?
Sure. So at Microsoft, we use video in all aspects of the funnel. I actually run the hybrid virtual event program for the US at Microsoft. And how we really think about our video and live streaming is very much from a marketing to sales relation. So we are all about funnel, pipeline, and demand generation, lead generation. How we use the live stream is twofold. One, we're gating and doing a full demand gen strategy around events. And then we're also, the second tier of that is we're also amplifying. So that's how we're using things like AmpLive, Twitter, and Facebook. And so that's the ungated strategy. So we sort of take a 2-prong approach. But our bread and butter, and really how I show ROI and the importance of what we're doing so that we can continue these programs, is part of that pipeline story, right? So tracking back to our leads.
Great. Marissa, how do you do it at Salesforce?
Yeah, so we are on a different path in a lot of ways. So I know we had someone from Salesforce earlier today that was talking a lot about the webinar series, and that's a lot of gated content. Working on the event side and really looking at our streaming, what we do for streaming for events, it's pretty much all ungated, pretty much 100% ungated. And we are looking at gathering new audiences, gaining likes, engagement, and viewership, and really at the very top of that, of the pipeline. And so looking at how we can get people excited about things that Salesforce is doing, and then from there, hopefully they'll attend the event in person or get in touch and find another way to get into the pipeline. But we do it from both live streaming our events and then also creating on-demand content as well that we are utilizing in all of our social feeds and on YouTube and Salesforce Live and all sorts of things.
Right on. Rebecca.
Similar to Kyla, I think LiveRamp is specifically focused on about 1,000 total accounts within the brand space that we really go after. And so we have to take a really targeted approach to the way that we do live streaming. So it's more about engagement with existing contacts as well as sort of top of the funnel. We do a little bit of ungated for our biggest events. We have 2 very large anchor events, one in the spring and one in the fall, that are really that high level ungated stuff. And then we have on-demand and live, not directly related to a live event that we do. So it's just all digital live events as well that we do throughout the year that are more targeted at a combination of our customers and lower funnel customer or prospects.
Awesome. So demand gen, awareness, account-based marketing, you guys are using live streaming in a bunch of really creative ways.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of content are you plugging into these strategies, and how did you figure out how to make them work?
I can take that, yeah. So, there's twofold. There's the hybrid events, which we're streaming live from location like we're doing here, really big scale, sort of like a Dreamforce or whatnot, these large moments in time. And then we're also producing live content in studio. And for that, we're choosing a lot of thought leadership topics. So for example, I have an event coming up the end of next month in June about AI, and it's all about AI, right? So it's a 2.5-hour live stream, multi-session with a host, and we're not coming at it from a, here's Microsoft's products and services at all. What we're doing is we're thinking very top of the funnel. We're approaching it as, we want you to see us as the thought leader in AI. We want to help you better understand AI. So we're choosing topics that we feel like can really host a good conversation about thought leadership. And then naturally, post-event, if somebody is interested in more information on whatever, that's just naturally going to happen once they get in the pipeline and once they start a dialogue with your company.
Yeah, I totally agree. So a lot of you raised your hand when you said that you'd been to Dreamforce, like on-site, in person, right? How many of you have watched any of Dreamforce or any other Salesforce events online? Yeah, we are definitely an event-based marketing company. So we have events worldwide pretty much all the time. And we recognize that it's not possible for people to be there all the time. So our events cover everything from AI thought leadership sessions to our very product-focused sessions to roadmaps for a specific product. So when I'm looking at all the content that's streaming, I work with our amazing team that, hey guys, and we're thinking about where should we be streaming this? And it's regularly not to one location. For Salesforce, we have so many different social channels. So we have, the Salesforce core channel. We have the Dreamforce channels. We have all of our products channels. And we're also looking at that from a, okay, we want to stream this live on Facebook, and we're not going to put any money behind it. We want to, and it's our biggest thing, and so we are going to put that on Facebook because Facebook gets the easiest large organic viewership. We're only going to put it on Twitter, let's say, if we have an AI thought leadership session, we're going to put that, let's say, on, and we have that alongside like a major Mark Benioff keynote. We're going to focus on the Mark Benioff keynote because it's him. And we were going to still look at, what's our next biggest group of people that would be interested in this among all of our channels, and that might be Dreamforce channel. And so we might stream that on Dreamforce, but we'll also have to consider, all right, we might have to put a few dollars behind this to get people to view on Twitter. So we're able to use just so many different social channels, and we've really been building out that strategy. And so we're able to take our very large events and kind of dissect that content and find the right online audiences for that.
Got it. So you're almost like targeting content to the specific channels where you know what's going to resonate most.
Right.
So keynotes on Salesforce.com.
On the Salesforce Facebook page, like we really have been focusing on our social channel streaming. If we don't have money to put behind like a Twitter feed, and we really find that like you can put a tiny bit of money behind any of these, and depending on how you target them, you can get big numbers. But if we don't have that money for Twitter, we tend not to do it, and we'll instead then have a live tweeting. We'll live tweet and send people back to Salesforce Live channel. But in general, we really like to have that organic viewership of people finding it within their streams.
Absolutely. So how does it work in terms of you selecting the right content for your account-based marketing efforts?
Yeah, so it's interesting because you talked when you came on about in terms of finding should companies become publishers. So we've actually spun out about 9 months ago a completely independent site of LiveRamp that is called Ramp Up. It actually originally started as that was our core event that we were doing, and it's now moved into an entirely digital space. So a lot of the traffic that we drive is to that website, and that the entire focus of that website and that content is top of the funnel thought leadership content. So and the purpose of that, the strategy behind that is we want people to think of it as an independent site. We aren't trying to sell them anything. We're not here to push a particular product or a particular thing. It's more about education. LiveRamp is really known for, we have almost 600 partners, of which Salesforce and Microsoft are too. So we have a ton of content coming inbound from those partners that we push on that site. So it's really become an independent space, and that really drives the strategy. Is that we are not only from us but from our partners. It's thought leadership, and we've gotten some angry conversations with partners because they want to push a particular agenda, and we really push them to understand that this is not about a sales agenda. This is about really education and making people want to learn more from you, not about a push. So
yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think I alluded to this a little bit, but the whole thought leadership model is really one that resonates with us. And when we have partners involved in our programs, oftentimes when we get on those speaker prep calls, it's just that, it's like, it's a pitch. And we basically say that we need to reevaluate, or we need to think differently about how we present this, because that's not the kind of stream that we're going to be doing, these sort of like pitch presentations. And so it's about telling the message and ultimately getting somebody excited about your product or service. But you can do it in a way where you're seen really as a thought leader, so that people get excited about.
And they keep coming back.
And they keep coming back.
And I think once they get that and they see the results, they actually get really excited about it. But we've had some very difficult, we've had to pull our BD people in a few times to have some rough conversations with people about the strategy. So,
So this is a great segue, because you're talking about thought leadership. And when I think about thought leadership, I immediately go to this notion of how do I delight customers? How do I create an authentic relationship, right? And so you've got partners, you've got in-house stakeholders. They all care about something beyond just delighting and surprising customers. They care about the cheddar. So what's the strategy, or how do you go about selling what you're doing with Live to these disparate audiences so they really get the impact and the value of it? Anyone want to jump in?
So in terms of like the chatter, the conversation, the engagement that comes from these videos?
Cheddar.
Oh, totally different.
So like your stakeholders.
Yeah.
Your stakeholders.
Basically,
and the ones who are going to be investing in your broadcast.
Right. So leadership stakeholders,
So I can jump in. So I think one of the things that how we think about it is, and how we tie it to opportunities really is, it's very easy to track conversions, because once people are on the site, they usually click around to other stuff. We offer, especially with our partners, we give them the opportunity, if there's a live streaming event, to offer some sort of content piece related to it that we advertise underneath it. So we get a lot of click-throughs to those to download whatever the content piece is. So then we're able to track those conversions through to conversations that our sales development, because our sales development team then immediately, within 24 hours, is calling up on those people who we know are attending, track those conversations to meetings, to opportunities, to, and also the other thing that has been really good is those conversions. I know we talked about it in the last one, but visits to live events online that then convert to in-person events that then convert to opportunities, and it becomes this sort of self-feeding funnel.
Awesome. Marissa, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the content that I'm creating, again, is top of the funnel, and so we're not even, and specifically for Salesforce events, we have a very unique issue, unique problem that we're not usually trying to drive people to the events in person. We are looking for ways to create engagement for them so they can take part in the event from somewhere else because, again, unique problem that we sell out of pretty much all of our events. And so that's my job, is to find ways to get people engaged and get people the in-person experience online. And so a lot of that comes from in-person feedback and also working with our stakeholders to assure them that just because, let's say, for example, we have a Salesforce World Tour where it's totally, we can't get people in anymore, but for some reason, no one's going to one of the sessions, like one of the keynotes. Being able to show viewership of that session online to the stakeholder. They might be upset with the on-site people, but I'm their friend because they're like, okay, maybe people weren't on-site watching, but we had like a huge viewership online of people being engaged, and it definitely makes people happy. It's hard to check and see how many, like the actual pipeline that's built from that because of our mostly social streaming. But good smile always helps.
And I think that's an interesting, so if we think about delighting customers and we think about hybrid events where you're doing an in-person and an online, there's been a lot of conversation in the past about, does live streaming inhibit people from then coming? Right. So that's been a big conversation piece for leadership. Is I don't know, because we need to get butts and seats.
Right. Cannibalization.
But what we're finding out through some research, there's an organization called DEI, Digital Experience Institute, and they did a recent study, and they actually found that oftentimes when somebody does attend a live stream, if that experience is really powerful for them, it will actually drive them to attend the event next year. So as opposed to it going against, we're actually finding that it's very much helping. And then of course there's the All Up brand. So I think there's some really interesting things you can do to delight customers and make them feel like they're getting something that the in-person audience doesn't get. Because to go to an event in person is pretty obvious, right? You get FaceTime, networking time. Can you think about offering your online audience behind the scenes stuff? What are you doing? Where are you taking your audience when the in-person is going on lunch or coffee breaks? Like those behind the scenes. So now the online audience feels like, wow, I'm getting stuff that not even the in-person audience gets. So delighting customers, I think there's creative ways to make sure that whether somebody comes to your event online or in person, that you're giving them these different unique experiences.
Yeah, and that goes back to the content. Like, exactly, that's a huge thing. And then also, people can't, if they go to a big conference, they can't always go to everything. Right. And so having that opportunity to see the on-demand videos that maybe were streaming live that are available on demand, they can go back and prioritize being in person at the event, networking, meeting people, and then going back and sitting on their couch and watching the sessions.
Well, great. So 3 different approaches to driving that content that makes people most happy to come back over and over again or come back to an event in person. So great. So let's switch gears and let's talk a little bit about ROI, attribution, measurement. How do you hack that to tell the story that actually gets your partners and your stakeholders excited about what you're doing so that you can continue to do it?
Do you want to?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been doing the same pre-Dreamforce show for 5 years, and so I feel like I must be making someone happy. I haven't figured out who that is yet, but they keep giving me money to do it. So I think that a lot of it is it's become part of the marketing and education piece for Dreamforce. I have a web series called The Road to Dreamforce that is an online streaming show that educates people for Dreamforce. When I first started, it was about driving demand generation for the event, and now that's like last on our priority list. And number 1 is educating people. For any large conference, making sure you know how to get the most out of the event is the most important thing, because if you get there, it can be so overwhelming, and you're like, I'm just going to sit in bed right now. I'm not even going to touch this. So that's my goal. And even though, again, like we have a lot of people at events, there's very specific elements for specific segments that we want people to. We want the service folks to know that they have specific sessions and specific areas for them. And sometimes that's not a piece of education for the broader audience. And so I think that because I've just become part of the Dreamforce machine, that's how I keep getting money, cheddar, if you will.
Awesome. So you're institutionalized.
I'm institutionalized.
And that's a good thing.
Grandfathered.
Rebecca?
Sure. So in terms of attribution and ROI, I talked a little bit about it in my last answer, but I think you think about it in the different phases of where we are. So for a lot of that content that's on the ramp-up site, it's more about those traditional metrics like visits and click-throughs from social channels and our advertising and tracking those real top-of-funnel metrics. And then once we're on the site, there's been a ton of focus on iteration of the site, testing, A/B testing, and things like that to make the conversions higher and to those content pieces that are gated. And then once, so there's a team that focuses more on that top-level online ads analytics, then there's a team that focuses on the digital conversion section, and then once they're actually in the funnel, we have our marketing ops people who focus on that conversion and that track through from MQL all the way through to an opportunity and a closed one. And then we also have, on the flip side, because it is such a small universe for us and we are ABM focused, there's a lot of, there has been a move, I would say, in the last 2 years for us to also tracking. We do a lot of MTA, multi-touch attribution for our current customers. So making sure that they are going to our online-only events, our in-person events, and making sure that the engagement factor is really there as well. So we have an engagement score that we use to track that.
So that's fabulous, but it also seems like it is definitely a team effort across.
Yeah, I mean, the entire team is.
It's like it takes a village, or a company to pull it off.
Yeah. Again, we talked a little bit, like there's the in-person events team that tracks in-person events and the conversions from that. There's our digital team that tracks conversions and metrics from that. And then there's the marketing operations team that sort of tracks across all of the touch points to get those numbers. So, yeah.
Marissa, how does that play into the hybrid, I'm sorry, Kyla, how does that play into the hybrid events that you're doing for Microsoft?
I actually love metrics, I love numbers, and I love this conversation because I get excited. My favorite thing is to look at how everything did afterwards and how it's doing when you're in the on-demand phase, right? Because to your point, we are measuring all of that stuff. When we do a live stream, we might have 70 different marketing tactics. And we're analyzing and we're watching how each one of those performs, and then we're making adjustments. But outside of that, there's things that happen within the environment, Q&A, what's going on in your, what's going on with Twitter, how much conversation, polling questions. I mean, there's a gazillion different ways to kind of have your audience interacting, and so we do look at those as KPIs, key performance index. And so, but the other thing, basic line is you got to show ROI. And so there's a ton of different KPIs to look at, but at the end of the day, what I'm looking at is how much did it cost me for the entire thing, and then what kind of outcome did we get? And so, and it does go into, your point, it goes into a pipeline. We use Marketo, goes into Marketo, we watch that, we watch it become an MAQL, and then through pipeline. The tricky part for us is, a lot of our products and services, it's not a fast flip. It's not like going and buying a laptop, right? These are like huge, massive campaigns. And you're a big enterprise company and you're buying Azure from us, right? So that timeline might be a year later. So year over year in my fiscal year, when I have to prove my ROI, I can't always do it in the traditional sense, where I say, here's how much I spent and here's all the outcomes, because that outcome might come in year 2, for example. Right. So so what I do is I tend to look at the MAQLs and flipping to sales. So we sort of nurture that a little bit because the timeline is long. So you do have to think about that kind of stuff when you're tracking. But ultimately, even for a company like Microsoft, I can't keep doing my programs if I don't show that it's being effective, right, as a marketer.
Right. So for any of you, is there any data you wish you had today that would make that story of your success easier when you're using your when you're integrating live stream into your programs?
Anonymous people, being able to tie like just visitors on a website to an actual person that you're already talking to is really, like if they are not logged in and visiting your website, it is very difficult to tie them to. And you could prove, you know, if you had that data, you could prove that it's probably, you know, 5 late-stage opportunities. To your point, it's about a 12 to 18-month sales cycle for what we do. And so if we had that, we could prove like, hey, this is where they're engaging. This is why this is important. Like even if, but we just can't show that right now. So
from a social perspective as well, that'd be great to be able to see that.
Yeah, I agree too.
Sounds like a magical land.
Right, right. So
someone should create that.
Unmask the viewer.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't it be great to
GDPR.
say, you know, this person watched a live stream on our Facebook channel 5 months ago and did these other things, but we're just not there yet. But that would be great.
Yep.
That would be.
And then be able to use that information to target them for more stuff and turn around and
Right. But still, even with your audience being to a certain extent masked today, you are doing a bit of retargeting already.
Right.
What tools are you doing to kind of pull that all together so you're getting some return on the investment, even for those anonymous viewers?
We're definitely using like Twitter and Facebook retargeting across the board.
Okay.
Even with people that sign up for pretty much anything that's, well, we use all the lists of retargeting. We just don't know who they are.
Yeah, so in addition to Facebook and Twitter, we use AdRoll as well.
Yeah.
So that's our retargeting.
The almighty pixel.
Yeah.
I mean, your website, you know, we don't always know who's coming, but we try to track that, and we do use Marketo, and we do have that tagged. So you know, that's another area that we really try to monopolize on, you know, retargeting via our website, for example. And then even, you know, AmpLive. AmpLive has the ability to retarget for people who watched your stream via the banner ad units, right? And so how can you think about for the next event, knowing that these people, you don't know who they are, but you know they watched the stream in the banner, retargeting them for another online event. And then hopefully eventually getting them to do something in which you do discover who they are, right? They give you some information about them.
Got it. So for anyone who's thinking about starting out, let's say I am a marketer, I need to put on an event, I want to amplify that event because I've got customers who can't get there, and then I also want to reach net new folks. Where do I get started? It all seems very, very complicated. I need production, I might need advertising, I might need some pre-promotion. Help me get started. Is there like a playbook that you guys could help me crowdsource in 5 minutes or less?
So I would say, I think the first place to start, you mentioned it, but you have to start with good content because I think the most important piece is making sure that you have good content that people want to view. And then I have been lucky enough to be at my current company for almost 5 years. And so we've just iterated, you know, we started with just making sure the event was solid and then added like live social, and then we added live streaming, and then, you know, so it's been sort of an iterative process to be able to build on that. So I think but I think ultimately, like, nobody is going to show up and come back to make sure that you can iterate if you don't have that really solid content. So that's where I would start.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Also, starting small and engaging.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go after 1 million people on your first time, and again, your content isn't strong, you're not getting actual feedback. And while seeing if people come back is a great indicator of if you had great content, actually talking to people, there's nothing that replaces that. And getting that feedback. And it's harder the more people that you have in your stream to actually have those conversations. So starting small, trying that content out, and have your growth follow your quality of content.
Right on. So what would starting small look like for Salesforce?
We've never done small, just kidding. I mean, a lot of it is for starting small.
So I'm going to feed the witness. So here's one thing I was thinking about, right? So when I worked at Salesforce, working with Marissa, full disclosure, we started using Facebook.
Yeah.
And Facebook live streaming. And where we started was not in live streaming our big keynotes and thought leadership on Facebook. We started where?
Oh, well, on the website, the specific website on Salesforce Live. Sorry, I'm missing something.
No,
Okay.
It's my fault.
Oh,
You did
okay.
a very good job of leading you. So the point I was trying to get to was one of the things that Marissa, and just hats off to her, pioneered was figuring out how we could use simple solutions for driving live streams to Facebook, not unlike what Victor showed us during the Epiphany demo earlier, that allowed her to do pretty good quality video that could engage with people who are already really sort of awesome fans of Facebook, Salesforce, or Salesforce on Facebook, and you were able to kind of ladder up from there. And that's where, once you got that going, then there became critical mass for Michael and his team to start also using Facebook.
Well, one of the things also were the rules that with Facebook wouldn't let you stream something on Facebook that was streaming somewhere else, and so that definitely made it difficult to do in the first run of it. But since that rule has changed and you can stream to 800 places, and they realize that you're not going to solely stream to Facebook, it's definitely been something that's become part of what we do in general. And I even with that, when we were streaming a little web show to a specific site, to the Salesforce Live site, we'd still drive people back to Twitter to have questions and things along those lines. So it was always focused on having that public display of engagement. So we were not only able to real-time engage our audience, but also we were able to show that engagement, and that is a piece of information that our stakeholders, again, would be interested in seeing, and we were able to showcase that to people that were either on the show or anything else. And that was across all Salesforce Live streams beyond just that show, but hashtag Salesforce Live back in the day.
Hashtag Salesforce Live. Kyla, any additional ideas?
You know, I would just say that when you think about your live streaming in this day and age, you have to have your social strategy. Like, they go together, right? You can't really have live streaming in a box by itself. There's all the social that goes along with it. So if you think about, thinking about that a little bit more, if you think about how do I start really small, you know, Facebook Live, right? There's a lot of tools out there now, a lot of different players, a lot of different free tools. There's sort of, you know, you've got cell phones, video. There's almost no reason not to start playing around with it and then start slowly proving yourself. And then if you can start showing some of that, you know, ROI, it might not be like, okay, this sale is because of this, but if you can start showing views, number of eyeballs, maybe click-throughs or something like that, responses on Twitter, you can start building that momentum to maybe get a little bit of budget to start doing more things. So, you know, that social ecosystem has a lot of tools available in which you can get started for, you know, almost zero. And then having good content.
I think that's a fantastic way to think about it, because that's really, like, if you think about investment in production is really where the growth is. And so how we started was our social media team, who was just doing like really live Twitter feed and live like Facebook updates with pictures, then started to like film it and post it as a live like film, like Periscope or Facebook Live or whatever. And so it was just like a cell phone video that was this like 20-minute or 20-second clip, you know, and we were able to show like, oh look, these are getting twice as many likes and twice as many shares and twice as much engagement as this other post that just had a picture. And so maybe we should think about doing a little bit more investment. So then we invested a little bit more in production quality, more people on it, and then it's become to the point today where it's a significant part of our investment. So I think that's a great way to phrase it.
Fantastic. So number one, start with a kick-ass social media strategy.
Yeah.
Content.
Yeah, content.
Content one.
Content first, because you want to engage on the content, and then social, and then video.
And some good speakers too, because
influencer element.
We've had times
that
where
you have to think about.
Yeah,
events are hard.
Okay, so good content. Number one.
Yeah.
Social media strategy. Number 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 3, starting small, using the social tools that are available to figure out how to do the video that you want to live stream. And then number 4, iterate, iterate, iterate.
Yep.
Make sense?
Perfect.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thank you, guys. This has been super helpful for me. Hopefully it's been helpful for you as well. And we've got a little bit of time at the end. So anyone out there who has a question, please raise your hand and let's hear from you.
Hi, proposed calculation. So much of the case that we've been trying to prove is sort of that link from sort of social down into your CRM. But then kind of felt like GRP came along and sort of swiped everything out, so we had to redouble the opt-in. So now trying to make the case about like, well, no, promises nothing like that will happen again or whatever, but it probably will. So how do you adapt to big sweeping changes like that when you're trying to sort of marry your social strategy to your CRM acquisition?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that, and I don't have the answer in that it was just last Friday, right, that it happened. And
still getting the emails.
And full disclosure, I think we're all down this journey of trying to figure out what it means. I mean, there's some obvious factors, but I think there's a lot of other aspects where we're trying to understand what's now okay and what's not, and we're still really trying to figure that out. And so I think it's sort of TBD on some of that stuff, but you know, we are going to need to take a look at, you know, especially when you're collecting PII, we're going to need to really take a look at our landing pages, like our registration pages and the disclosure, privacy at the bottom. And Microsoft in particular is super, super strict on all of that stuff from a legality standpoint. So for example, every one of my landing pages, I literally have to show that directly to legal, and that has to get sign off and approval in order for me to launch it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. You know, I think it's all goodness for us as consumers. As marketers, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge because we're going to have to learn not to have as many things at our fingertips.
Yep. I think my recommendation is, well, there's twofold. Is one, it's like everybody thinks that, oh, it's just Europe. You don't need to think about that necessarily, but it's coming here too. I mean, there's 2 ballot initiatives in California, right? That one on June 5th and one in the fall, so that are even stricter and crazier than GDPR. So my recommendation is follow the absolute top bar in terms of best practice, in terms of like making sure that it's not automatic opt-in, that you have double opt-in already, and that you're building for protocols that you can see coming in the future, and so that you don't have to do the last minute, by the way, we're updating our privacy policy email, and so guess what, you're all opted in kind of thing, because that's not great either. So so my advice and what we are trying to do now is enact what we think are the absolute strictest standards for opt-in in order to be able to accommodate no matter what comes in the future.
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you. Other questions? You in the back. Go for it.
Two-part question. How many minutes do you consider viewing between it being what you would call bounce and what you would call someone as engaged with a live event? And maybe just related to that, how much value do you attribute to somebody who watches a replay versus somebody who watches a live stream?
Second one, I count them equally, live stream versus a replay. It's a meaningful view if it's longer than those 3 seconds that Facebook counts it. No, a lot longer than the 3 seconds. But in general, on demand versus live, I'd say that they have equal footing. It's maybe even more so for on demand because someone's making a choice to watch versus a auto play.
Yeah, I would echo. We don't differentiate between later views and live views. I would say it depends on the length of the event that we're doing to really determine that. But I would say at least you have to be at least 5 minutes. Like the shortest event that we do is 30 minutes, and so I would say at least 5 minutes of that you have to be engaged somewhat. So that even feels a little short, but that's what we count from.
I mean, for like an individual, I mean, I guess it kind of like you can watch something for 3 minutes, and that maybe that counts as a view, but then they might go back. I don't know. I think that 3 minutes is probably the cutoff because that shows that you're I mean, 3 minutes of my time is a lot, but I usually don't watch things over 2 minutes. Now, am I never a valuable viewer? I don't know.
Right.
Try to keep things short.
I think if it's on-demand content, I would agree. We try all our on-demand, well, webinars and longer videos, but our on-demand content is, we're trying to do snippets of things rather than like doing the whole chunking out a whole live hangout or something like that, because I mean, just attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
I guess that's something that's like also how we're looking at content. Yeah, we've got the long form videos that we have that are streaming or are part of events, but something we're really focusing now is creating those 2 minute and under segments, or 2 minute or under singular stories, or 2 minute and under highlights of a topic. And you know, if someone's watching that whole thing, because again, 2 minutes is pretty much as long as any of us are going to watch anything, and they're still interested, giving them that option to click through to the longer form. But I'd say 2 minutes counts.
Yeah. 2 minutes counts.
We went down from 5 minutes. We're down to 2 now.
Well, so the thing that I find interesting is it sort of, and you guys have both sort of hit on this, what matters in the engagement is what the next step is afterwards. And if you can measure that, then you could find that, you know, that minimum time is only 60 seconds because you're closing afterwards, right after that.
Yeah.
Until you figure it out, it's kind of anybody's guess. So.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I would say, in addition, what's interesting about live and on demand, I sort of like on demand. One thing that we do after a live stream that's maybe 3 or 4 hours, for example, because it's at an event, what we'll do for the on demand is we'll take that live stream, we'll slice it up via session. And so then when we're offering it on demand, it's more of a library of sorts when they get to the landing page. And then we're able to track which sessions somebody watched so that we can retarget them better, right? So if you watched a session on AI, I'm going to give you some post-event information on that thank you for attending email that has to do with AI. But if you watched a session over here on, you know, the new Surface or whatever it is, right? Then I'm gonna kind of be a little more pointy and a little more targeted. So there's some cool things and reasons I really like on demand. Live is still amazing because you have all of the activity going on in the social world at the same time. But there's some very cool things you can do on demand too.
Awesome. That was a fantastic question.
How we went in all different ways.
Yeah.
And you did. And I would love to take one more, but unfortunately we are right at time. So what I'd like to do is thank our esteemed guests, Kyla, Marissa, Rebecca. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being an awesome audience.
Thank you.
We can get off the stage.
Thanks.
Thank you again, Victor. And are you ladies and gentlemen going to be around until the end, just in case anybody wants to approach you with some questions? Awesome. Great. Thanks again. All right, everybody feeling good so far? Caffeinated enough to make it through to the end? I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, well, I think that was a great session about really, you know, what it takes to create a real demand funnel using live video. And they actually touched a lot on what this next session is about. This is going to be the most panelists we've had on stage, and I think this is a really, really important topic. Personally, in my role in Fora TV, we get this request a lot, and it's the request for live social. It's definitely something that's trending. I think people are just starting to wrap their heads around what it really means, how to measure it. We've heard all day how metrics are important, which metrics are important, and also what makes good content. I think that's a very open question that we're all still kind of wrestling with. That was actually the question that I would have asked that panel, but I didn't want to hug the mic. So our next speaker is, are you ready to start, actually? I think I'm jumping ahead. Oh, they are still getting mic'd up. Okay. So I'd be interested to hear from the audience what has been the biggest takeaway for all of you so far. Anybody want to share? Anybody? Anybody? Yes? Right. Right. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if everybody heard that, but what she said was basically the fact that everybody has been repeating that the live stream actually produces greater attendance. So it doesn't cannibalize at all. In fact, it has the opposite effect, more butts in seats, greater engagement, and hopefully better value for the next time around. Right. Right. So quality is important, but I think the asterisk in that, which I've been hearing, which was a revelation to me, listening to these big brands saying, actually, it is okay to start with, you know, a lesser quality, or just start with what you've got, right? If what you've got is a cell phone, start with that, and then start building yourself up. I mean, the fact that we saw a Bing video where, you know, the camera was literally shaking, and that still spun itself off and is now kind of its own established broadcast that they do regularly. And that's one of the hugest brands in the world that did, you know, it just started from something that all of us here in this room could do with the equipment that we had. I thought that was really powerful. Anybody else want to share? There was a lady here earlier who was live streaming herself singing, and now I'm like, maybe we should have her on here for an a cappella session. Oh, she just left. Of course she did. Yes. Anybody here? So you raise your hand, sir. So no, this is like the perfect use of this time, because what she's asking is, you know, we've heard a lot about B2B. Her particular area of interest is B2C. Found somebody, woohoo, cocktails. Anybody on this side working on user-generated or B2C content, C2C? There you go. There's 3 of you. It's a party. It's officially a party. It's not a date. All right. And you know, oh, one more from Eric.
One more thing that I think, you know, maybe as a next rendition of this event, hearing more about the viewer experience. I think that we talked a lot about the publisher experience and how we are creating content and our strategies and the data that we're getting. I think something that we always forget is, what is that viewer experience like? What are we doing to make sure that the viewer can engage with the video content the same way that we're creating these video on demand experiences for our website? So just something to think about as we continue to talk and network later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a big part of the question of what is good content. Because good content is the content you want to watch, but then who's watching? And what do you want them to come away with, right? And so, yeah, what is the viewer experience like is a very important thing. To answer your question, ma'am, I think, well, one of the things that I've learned at a live event very recently was that B2B consumers are very often and more often acting like B2C consumers now, which is why the question of anonymity is very important, because a lot of B2B consumers don't want to give that information up or won't do it as easily as they used to. So there is a lot of crossover there, and I think that we're going to find over the years, especially with GDPR, that's the quality of what you're giving them has to be a lot higher for them to give you the information that you want out of them. All right, I think we're ready. Are we ready? Okay, so up next is the power of social live video and the ins and outs, how you can harness this power, and what are the best practices, and what are all the best brands doing. So to help us break that down is our next moderator, whom I am giving this microphone to, I believe. Please welcome Mark Gawith of Switcher Studio.
Thank you so much. So we're going to do something a little bit different because this is all about live video. We're going to bring someone in live from London. So we're just getting everything set up. In the meantime, I'm going to let Nick Mattingly, the CEO of Switcher, go ahead and start off introductions, kick everything off while we get this set up, and we'll take it from there.
All right, thanks, Mark. Let's do this. Wanted to kick things off and introduce our panelists, but I want to let you all do that. Can you tell us who you are, what company you're with, and your job title or what your role is in live video with your organization?
Sure. Excuse me. My name is Adrian Colon, and I'm the Director of Video Production with Instapage, which is a landing page software company.
Jeffrey Colon, Senior Marketing Communications Designer at Microsoft, and I work across all products.
And they're not related.
Yeah.
Coincidence.
So I flew up all the way from LA. You can't introduce me? All right, fine. I'm Dave Basulto. I'm CEO of iOgrapher. We make filmmaking cases for like this for iPhones and iPads. And I do all the social.
Good deal. And I'm Nick, CEO at Switcher Studio. We have a creation platform to help make better social video. If you go live with the Facebook or YouTube app, for the most part, it's whatever you point your phone at. And with Switcher, we allow you to put your logo on screen or show a photo, a video. You can also do multiple cameras using other iPhones and iPads. So it allows a higher level of production quality without a need for special hardware. So Mark, how you doing on time? Do you need to
Need another minute.
Wait it out?
Tell
Okay.
a joke or something.
I'm not funny, so we're not going to
Come on, do some stand-up.
But I wanted to thank our panelists for coming out today. Very different backgrounds, very different companies. Michael Lake is who we're going to be bringing on screen first. He's with L'Oreal. He's calling in from London, so it's a little late out there. L'Oreal has been using live video for talent and recruiting. And when they have done events in the past, they've had maybe 100 people that would attend in person, and they've been able to take that online and reach a much larger audience, a much different demographic than they would typically when they're on site at certain locations. And Michael will probably reiterate some of that and tell us a little bit more about their experience. We're going to give Michael a few minutes to kind of talk about how they're using live video, and then we'll bring that back to the panelists. Mark will be leading the Q&A. We have some questions that I think you're all going to enjoy, and we'll take the conversation from there.
We're just about ready. Sorry, we're putting him through his paces, so I appreciate all of the work that you're doing for our last-minute ad here. So there you go.
Oh, we're back here. Hi, Michael.
Michael, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome.
Perfect. So this is Michael Lake. He is instrumental in L'Oreal's live video strategy. So we're going to let him talk for just a few minutes on what L'Oreal is doing with social live video and how they're leveraging it to reach the next wave of L'Oreal employees. So take it away, Michael.
Thanks very much. So I have a lovely view of the ceiling of that room, and you guys have a lovely view of my mother-in-law's living room, which you're very lucky to see. I'm in the southwest of England, where I grew up, in the countryside, and I wasn't worried about not being able to talk to you because of the time. It's quite late here. I was more worried that my mother-in-law might come down and tell me off. So if she comes in here, it's you guys in trouble. So yeah, I work in our global recruitment team, so my job is to use social media, use whatever means necessary to attract people to join our company. And so I help represent our brand as an employer. Hey, I can see some people. Hi. So that's what we do, and we've been using live video as part of a kind of inter-complementary set of activities on social media. So live video is part of the puzzle that we think is the future of engaging people, attracting people, and more importantly, especially with younger talent, like we meet on campus or at university, college, it's really important to inform them. A lot of employers make the assumption that these kids know what they want to do, but actually I think we should be teaching them about what we do and teaching them what our people do. And live video is a really authentic, accessible way for us to do that. So I think, yeah, in conjunction with paid media, in conjunction with content-led campaigns, rather than job and employment-led campaigns, we can attract people to our company subconsciously. The kind of top-line stats, which I think Mark wanted me to share, which are quite interesting. So I've given you the holistic view of our challenge, which is around attracting people to our company and getting them interested in us as an employer. But within that, we have kind of sub-challenges, and the big one for us is diversity. So L'Oreal's mantra and L'Oreal's business goal is beautiful, and that means guys as well as girls. And every guy uses cosmetics, and they probably don't admit it or don't realise it, but every guy in the room that showered this morning, put your hand up. Every guy in the room wearing deodorant, you use cosmetics. Every guy who shaves or trims his beard or goes to the barber, you use some kind of cosmetics. So we need a balanced company so we can address the needs of male and female consumers. So, but unfortunately, naturally, we attract mostly women. Mostly women are interested in our company because they think of L'Oreal Paris and makeup and all of those kinds of things that we do too. So that's our kind of underlying kind of sub-challenge, I guess. And so live video is a way for us to reach people in an authentic way and engage with them in a way that will inform them and help them to learn. So in terms of the results we've had, we had on live video, so if we do a regular campus event, we have a reach of however many people are in the room. So like however many people are in that room right now, that's how much reach we would have. With a typical live video, we're reaching up to 5,000 people within 48 hours of the recording, which is massive and much, much bigger and much more democratic. We can reach any school, any social demographic, any ethnicity. We don't have to worry about going to the top schools. We can talk to everybody at once. So that's a really positive thing. That's really good for diversity. The other thing is that actually we've noticed that males disproportionately attend our live events. So we reach 55% males in the last couple of live events that we've run, which is amazing. We never get that through regular events or regular interactions with potential candidates. And I think the other thing, which is quite really like a bonus benefit, really is that after the live talk, we have kind of hygiene content that we can use to inform people. So, you know, if a candidate has an interview or if a candidate is interested in L'Oreal, they want to know what's our digital strategy. Well, that's cool. I can direct them to a 45-minute talk at Oxford University from our chief digital officer that will tell them our entire digital strategy. So when they go to that interview, they feel really well informed and be confident. They can have a far more interesting conversation. So that's probably the three top-line initial benefits that we've seen just over the last kind of 6 or so months that we've been doing these things. But we're definitely committed to continue it. I really see live as the kind of pinnacle of social. We've got lots of different things you can do on social, but live is the one that seems to currently be really trending, really attracting a lot of attention. So we're really excited to carry on. And the one thing I have to say, obviously, is that with something like Switch Studio, we're able to give these talks in a way that looks professional, that looks entertaining, that tuned in, stay connected, and keep listening for 20, 30, 40 minutes. If we can have a more professional looking feel, intersperse the footage with slides and other information that we want to share. So it's absolutely critical for us to be able to continue with that tool. We can't get the same kind of results and the same kind of interactions from standing on the phone or doing whatever you might do the old-fashioned way of doing live. So I hope that was interesting. I really appreciate you having me, kind of, for your conference. And I hope you can hear me well, and I hope it was useful. If anyone has any questions, if there's time, I can try and maybe answer them. But otherwise, get in touch with Mark, and you can maybe loop in with me through him or something like that.
Perfect, perfect.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. Everyone give Michael a round of applause, and thank you for staying up late for us. We appreciate it. So, all right, so we're going to get into the panelists on stage now and kind of talk about social live video. So, question for the panelists, the very first one is, where do you primarily go live? What's your destination platform of choice? If you could talk a little bit about that, why you use it, and kind of how you came to that decision. Dave, you want to start?
I'll start. So our main connection with our audience is Facebook Live, to our page. But let me just tell you quickly, I start on Instagram because we are a very visual company. We have over 70,000 Instagram really active people, and so I'll go on there and let them know, hey, come on over to Facebook. We're going to do a giveaway today, or I'm going to talk about an app or whatever. And it really sends a lot of traffic from there. Then we go on the Facebook page, and I'll do my live videos from there. But that's been the workflow, and I've tried everything. So,
Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the audience that we want to reach. So if we know that we have like a developer audience that we want to go after, we'll go live on Twitter because that's where they're most active. Plus, that's where the media, or I should say journalists are, so they'll write about whatever we might be talking about. If we're looking for just a more mass consumer audience, so you have a big announcement for Xbox, Facebook is a great place to be. Instagram actually has also been interesting too on the B2B side because, for a long time, B2B influence existed on the network, and I don't think a lot of people really paid too much attention to it. And now there's a number of different people that you can reach actually on Instagram with some connection. And then we've done some stuff on YouTube if you've actually embedded the player somewhere. That's a lot of work up front actually to do it. It's probably better to use a third party to do those things. And then of course just looking at other platforms where we could experiment, et cetera. I mean, I would like to see LinkedIn actually move into live video. I think that would be very helpful for the audience that we want. But I don't know what they do, even though even though they're part of us. I have no insight there.
Sure. Perfect. Adrian?
Primarily through Facebook Live. So we typically use it to engage with our audience, our CEO, Tyson Quick. We do these things called Founder Friday every other Friday. And basically it allows him to engage with our customers as well as just the general public. And sometimes we'll use it to release a new feature, demo something, or just answer general questions. And I collaborate with our social media guy, Talon Peterson. And basically, he'll field questions to Tyson as we're rolling our live stream. But once the live stream is finished, it'll live on Facebook, but then what we also do is we upload it to our YouTube channel, and it will live there as well.
Perfect. Nick?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is taking your live content and looking at other ways that you can reuse that in other places. Switcher as a creation platform, we were working on this solution before Meerkat, before Periscope existed, and Ustream and Livestream were the big dogs in those days. And That was 4 years ago. We don't care where you send your video, and if there's a platform that supports RTMP, the kind of more traditional, scary way of doing live video, you could use our solution to broadcast to those, and that could be YouNow, that could be Twitch, that could be Periscope Producer. But we've made it very easy to broadcast to Facebook and YouTube. Link your account and go live. And for our own purposes, as we've tried to build a relationship with our customers, we're seeing a lot of success with those platforms as well. We do webinars every week on YouTube. For first-time users, it's a place for them to come and ask questions, figure out how to get started with the hardware and devices they already have. And on Facebook, we do a weekly live broadcast that's about industry news or strategy. It's not about us, it's about what's happening in the world of live video. There's so many things that happen before you hit the button, before you start, on when you go live, why you should go live, what questions to ask. That there's some really interesting dialogues that happen around that. So we've seen a lot of growth and a lot of success with that. And separate from our public-facing pages, we have a group on Facebook for people that use our product. And it's a community of thousands of creators from all over the world. And the types of conversations that happen there for someone that's very familiar with the product and might have more technical questions is a lot different than what you might do for a more outward-facing social broadcast. So we've, as a company, used Facebook and YouTube a lot, but we've tried literally everything out there, just about every single platform, and there's a place for all of them.
So you touched on all of the things that we know now from years of doing live video. I want you to think back to the very first live video that you ever did. If you can, recall it, what was it, and what have you learned from that kind of first, maybe we'll call it a mistake, to up to now, because I'm sure we've all gotten better, as we've done more live video. So would love to just hear your take on what was your first live video, what did you learn from it, and how has that helped you progress? I don't care who starts. You guys fight over it.
Our first experience with live streaming was a Q&A between our between our CEO and our director of product, and it was a 3-camera setup, and everything went super smooth. However, the one thing that we had major issues with was audio. It was just like a huge headache was getting good audio. Because basically what was happening was all the audio was coming through the iPad, and they were so far away from the iPad that the quality was super low. So I ended up doing some research and found a wired lavalier mic that would plug right into our iPad, and it split 2 ways, so we could have 2 people on camera and have really clean audio. But since then, we haven't really had any issues whatsoever.
So audio was your biggest obstacle straight out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
My first live video was in 2008. I was working at an agency at the time. We used to do a lot of Q&As for USA Network. So we would actually ask many of the actors, would you be willing to do this Q&A? It's just going to be to the Facebook page of whatever that show is. I remember, I think one of the shows was Royal Pains. I'm sort of dating myself. But the problem we had is we only had, basically you have one camera and there's no other angles. So you sort of have the 2 actors that were literally just sort of like, hey, try to cram as close together as possible. And it just doesn't look very, it doesn't look that good. But ultimately, it got engagement because people were excited to be able to ask questions. And that's, I think, what we were looking for more than like this beautiful production. So the learning there was we ultimately realized, hey, I think production values will end up going up and we'll evolve with that.
Dave, I'm going to jump in so you can cut me off.
Go for it.
I like to talk.
I know you do. Go ahead.
So one of my first broadcasts was in college. I was really involved with the student radio station, and was using Mogulus, which was the precursor to live streaming. So we had an in-studio performance, And you mentioned audio. We had the audio part figured out because we were used to doing those for the radio. But we had a webcam set up, and it was running through a computer. And the next kind of evolution of that is I started working with the marketing team at the university, and they wanted to set up a goose cam. And this was like a really big deal. And when it went down, people would lose their minds. And I'd get calls on weekends when I'm like not on campus and have to go in and like reset the computer that's in a closet so people could watch the goose cam. So we've come a long way.
So you had a camera strapped to a goose?
It was on the top of a building. It's like third or fourth floor. We've got this nest where the geese hang out.
Sounds pretty exciting.
That sounds.
I think my first thing was like trying out Ustream. I was like, wow, we can do this stuff. I was doing tutorials. Eventually, they were able to do some kind of a screen share thing, I think, if I remember quick. And I was doing that. Tutorials on how to use Filmic Pro, how to use Premiere Pro and other desktop editing. And then I remember playing with Quick, and that was kind of cool. And I think the big aha moment for me was with Meerkat, rest in peace, was just this amazing app I thought at the time. And I was in Hawaii with my family, and I was walking along the deck of the Missouri battleship, and I just started to do a live stream just for the heck of it and see what happened. And I started getting all these people. At the end of the day, it was like 480 some people. I had no idea who they were, watching my live stream. Asked, hey, can you go back in and can we see that gun again? And can you go? And I was just like, this is really cool, you know? And I just saw the power of that.
Telling you where to go?
What's that?
They were kind of
they were saying, hey, let's go back and look at that cannon. I was like, but then so I'll do a quick thing for you. If I had had Switcher or Switcher Go, I could have had little stills in there of how it looked originally and battle stuff. You know, this is amazing. I could have made it a crazy experience. But I think now the ability to just do a full production, you know, from bringing in video to doing better audio to mixing the audio and all these tools that we have now with the apps is just, you know, tenfold of what it was.
So you all talked about in each of your stories, like what content is engaging, like what actually makes for good social live content. So, you know, if you could kind of expand on that a little bit more, you know, in each one of your roles, like what really makes good live content, and you know what makes it to where people actually want to watch it and interact with you or your brand.
So I'll just go again because I'm long-winded today. The other day I went on live to just show people this new case that we're working on, and you know, all of a sudden, big audience. Hey Dave, well, I'm from Ireland, I'm from here, and I would be on point and talk about stuff, but I would take a moment to say hello to them, and they love that. You know, people love to have this conversation, and you know, if they ask a good question, you know, stop for a moment, talk about it. If it's, you know, keeping with the flow and things like that. And I just see just having a two-way conversation, get your point across, but really include them in, let them feel I'm part of that, you know, and then they just love that. So that's my big thing that I like to do.
Do you think that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think for us it's accessibility. I don't think a lot of people have access to the CEO of a company, and that having the live stream platform, it allows Tyson to engage with anybody and everybody that has a question about literally anything from growing a business to how our product works or issues that they might be having with our product. But yeah, for us, it's just about making him as accessible as possible.
I think too, the type of content you see in live, especially over the past 18 to 24 months, is starting to shift. If you think about video historically for live, it's event-based. It's something with a day, a time, and place. It's Thursday at 7 o'clock, and it's the athletic event or the concert or worship or a press conference. And outside of that, video for business is a line item. You contract a videographer, they show up for 2 days, they disappear for a few weeks, and you have a video that's out of date 8 months later. And live is allowing businesses to document, to show what they're doing, to go behind the scenes, to get real-time feedback. It can be 80% good enough, but it's real, it's current, it's authentic. And I think we'll start to see more of a shift. The event streaming is not going away. You've got the devices, and there's a ton of different options out there. Like, why not set up a camera? But the ability to document and show what you're doing, you don't have to go out of your way for content. It's already there, and you can share that and build an audience.
Yeah,
I know.
I was going to say, as Nick said, like the ability to have people act almost as like your product advisory group is fascinating now. I mean, in the past, you would have to actually hold a product advisory group in person, and that would cost a lot of money to fly, you know, developers and other people to a location where then you would invite customers and they would stay all day and nothing really would get done, so to speak. You would sort of take feedback and then maybe you would build something, maybe you wouldn't. And now with live video, you could be like, all right, users of this product, we want to know what you have to say and be honest with us. And I think the wonderful thing is it actually allows people who work at a larger company to see what customers do on a, you know, think about their products on a day-to-day basis. Like, hey, why did you make it this way? This is the most ridiculous thing ever. It actually brings people down to a very humble level. And I think that's a very good thing. And now I have developers that will run to me and say, I want to do that next live video because I really want to speak to the audience, I want to talk to them, because it is more of a back and forth exchange compared to just sitting in front of a camera and dictating what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've seen some of the stuff that you guys do with Bing Ads specifically, and it's really cool to reach that specific audience. So really cool stuff. I know we're coming up on time here, so I wanted to get one more question for the panelists. Want to find out what is next for your organization in live video. You know, what do you guys see as kind of the next iteration? What are you hoping to do over the coming months to year with live video at each one of your organizations?
My biggest thing is consistency. I don't know if that's the problem with you guys, but I'll go 3 weeks in a row of Mondays, and then I'm like, oh, I got to do these other things, and I'll forget to go, and then I get bawled out by my people, like, where's the show, or, you know, when are you going to do another show? And so I have to really buckle down and say, these are the days we're going to do it, and that's it, and, you know, plan my shows in advance and be consistent. That's the biggest challenge for me, but, you know, I'm going to dig down and do it.
I think one of the things I want to do is, you know, we have weekly shows that we do, but I'd like to show up at more tentpole events, like big events, and here's why. I would like to actually do coverage that then I get to third-party media who uses my coverage. So think about that. Brands usually rely on media for media to cover them. But if you have actual live coverage of something that you've done and then you say, hey, here you go, you can use this, and they say, well, where'd you get that video from? Well, we created it. And it's different than like a PR-driven moment, because with live, you might be basically just interviewing someone and they're talking about something, but that footage is exclusive to your channel, and then you basically can give that to other media outlets. Well, then they have to say courtesy of Microsoft or whatever the company is that you're doing. So I think in some respects, there's that pivot there that I think the smarter brands might realize, like, we can't always rely on publicity to do all the work for us anymore, because we can go direct to customers. And at those tentpole events, whatever industry you're in, I think that's, you know, what we want to choose and what we want to show up at.
I think for us, it's about opening it up and making the entire company more accessible by bringing on other employees or other management, so that our customers and potential customers can also get to know them better. And I think that develops a sense of trust, you know? And so I think that's kind of where we're going to head and get more and more new faces on camera.
One of the things I've been wrestling with, our mission is to help empower businesses to do social video. And we've gone 1.5 years nonstop every week producing a live show. It's there and people expect it, but it's always in the studio. And one of the foundational elements of video is to set the scene. But we're always on set. And I think with where live has gone and being able to be mobile and do things on social, resetting the scene and going to new places. And our company, we're a startup, we're based in Louisville. We're not in San Francisco, we're not in New York. Like, I want to show people my city. I want people to know why we are where we are. I want to talk to the businesses in our community and show what they're doing and how they could use video. And I think this idea of being mobile and going places and getting out of the studio, out of the set, is going to be something that we really push for. And I think the content's going to be a lot different and more interesting, and just really excited to see where the conversation goes with kind of that reset on the scene.
Just really quick on the next thing. That's a huge opportunity also from where I see business going, is get out there and show small businesses how to do this thing. Mom and pop stuff, you know. We have a great bakery around the corner from my house, and I'm always telling the woman, you know, you make these amazing pancakes and stuff and breakfast. Why don't you show a little live video of that morning making the stuff, and you know, this is my special little secret, and then it really humanizes it, but it's so simple to do and inexpensive as heck, and the impact could be huge. But I just think that's a huge market that no one's really going after aggressively, teaching mom and pops, you know, how to do this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Perfect. I know we're probably like at 4:22 now, so we use a little extra time. Thank you again, everyone, for being here and taking part in this panel. Hopefully you all learned something from it. I don't think we have time for any questions, but I know Nick and I will be around till the end of this thing. So if you're interested in talking to us, you can find us out there. And I think Dave will probably be there as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mark, Nick, Dave, and the Collins. It's nice to meet kindred spirits and same names. I loved this panel, by the way, so thank you guys so much. I feel like we've talked a lot about social video, but this is the first panel that kind of took it to the level of interactivity, right? Being able to really interact directly with your audience, getting their feedback, giving them valuable information that helps their life, and then, you know, keeping that conversation going. And then obviously, when in doubt, put geese on, and apparently it all works out in the end. So we're going to do one last workshop today. This is actually going to be, you know, a really good one, because it's getting us to the point of now live streaming and making sure that we're applying best practices so we look great. Like the previous panel said, you start with what you have and with where you're at. But hopefully where you're at is at a baseline professional, presentable level. So please give it up again for our friend Victor. Epiphan Video, take it away. Victor, do you want this mic?
Okay, so let's all gather around just like last time. This is the last one of the day, guys, I promise. Then we can all go have drinks. It's a Sennheiser. Sennheiser, yeah. It's when you Google Sennheiser lavalier microphone, you'll see it. It's called the G500, I think, is the model. So let me make sure the light here is on, because we need the lights. There we go. Sorry? Do you know, is it possible to get the lights on up here as well, so we can have better lighting? Yeah. Okay. While they're on that, so us here at Epiphan Video, we market our products through a live show ourselves. So we have a live show every week on Thursday. You can check it out on our Facebook page, Epiphan Video Facebook page. We do lots of cool things. And for this particular talk, I thought we'd change it up a bit. Zachary here, he's kind of our live video expert, and he's had a lot of experience streaming these shows and working a lot, on set, working a lot to ensure that we have a really good viewer experience for our viewers. So I'll kind of hand it off to him, and I'll let him talk about the common mistakes made during a live stream that we have made ourselves, and the lessons that we've learned, and the best practices that we've adapted. So Zachary, go ahead.
So this presentation is going to be a little bit more about live streaming in general, not specifically Epiphan products. This is something everyone can take advantage of. So I thought. Victor mentioned earlier an event where streaming by a YouTuber was interrupted by a Windows update. And that becomes more common if you add more software, because updates have become automated, and that's something to worry about. Check your infrastructure. The things you control, your hardware and software, are great and may be ready for 4K 30 FPS, but your bandwidth might not support that, especially during a live stream. If you're being interrupted frequently by buffering, the quality of your live stream will suffer. Promote yourself. When you reach out to various distribution networks, invest time in building your channel, formatting your videos, it isn't that fun when only 12 people show up. So it's important to make sure your viewers know when to be there for your live stream, because if they're not there, you don't have a live stream. Double check everything. When it worked last week, yesterday, or even 5 minutes ago, something could have happened, citing those updates from earlier. But also, sometimes you have the wrong layout, where you're playing bad audio, or for some reason the mic's gone out. Everything I just mentioned takes time. So when you're preparing, no matter how good you are or how many times you've done the exact same setup, give yourself the time to go through the process, because going through the process is the process itself, and we must maintain a certain standard for consistency's sake in order to continue growing our audience as we stream live. The stream itself, we would recommend distributing to as many different platforms as possible: Facebook, YouTube, Twitch for the big three, and then whatever else you think your audience is going to be watching. By hitting multiple distributions, you can maximize your audience with minimal effort. Confidence monitoring is very important, and it's a way of verifying what's getting encoded by watching locally, such as a screen we have here on our Pro Mini, or having someone monitor the stream itself, could be in the same building or halfway across the world. Engaging your audience. With the confidence monitoring, you can see what your audience sees, but the way your audience reacts to it, that can be just as valuable as the live stream itself. Q&A sessions, webinars, or just acknowledging comments or preferences of your audience is a great way to help them feel like they're part of the show and humanizes you as the presenter or the production staff. Moving on to post-production, the things we do after the cameras turn off. Don't just delete content because you don't like it or you think it's not the highest quality it could be. By holding on to that content, you can look back and learn from it. More importantly, you could try to reuse it in different ways, such as helping promote your branding partners or sponsors, or examine it yourself in live by doing a commentary a couple weeks down the line. Behind the scenes. So everything is typical to us when we look at the wires, the cameras, the lights, the show itself. However, the audience might find that fascinating. Don't be afraid to explore what's happening behind the camera as part of a future show or something that you could possibly build on. But don't make it too complicated. Learn and grow. Film and television have changed dramatically over the last 100 years. There's no reason to think live streaming is going to be some homogenous, constant factor in our lives for the next 2 weeks even. So be prepared to change and be prepared to learn, especially if you have an audience that readily provides feedback. These last 3 points are something I couldn't really fit into any specific category, and it's very important that you invest in your success. Be prepared to spend a little money on the cameras, the encoders. It's very easy to get live, but if you want professional quality, you do have to invest in the hardware, and invest the time especially to be successful. Addressing the audience, acknowledge that you're not gonna please everyone all the time. Part of this is that different people have different interests, and maybe what you're talking about one week doesn't interest them the next week. Just last week at Epiphan Video, we decided to do stress tests on all of our hardware, and the viewers really liked that. We had a strong showing, so when all else fails, run over your hardware with a motorcycle. Consistency. As our last panel just discussed, it's important to be consistent from week to week. Don't treat your live stream as something that's fun to promote your internal cohesion or something to inspire creativity. It is a real business tool that needs to be treated like a business activity. It needs to be strictly managed and consistent. It takes a discipline to build the audience through the stream itself, because every minute there are 300 hours of video uploaded to YouTube alone. There's a lot of noise out there. The only way to differentiate yourself is through business practices such as consistency and promotion. Thank you all very much for your time. Have a lovely day. I'll see you at the bar.
Don't go anywhere. Only the strong survive. Thank you guys very much for staying till the end. No, I don't think I need it.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, cool. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much. Obviously, this was our first take at what we want the bigger picture to be. You guys all played a really, really important piece in that. Today was full of great content, great speakers, a lot of help from a lot of different people, and of course you guys being here, and I hope you took a lot of value away from today. You took lots of notes, you met some new folks, and most importantly, you take this and put it in practice in your daily live streaming places. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, Michelle, for emceeing the event.
My pleasure.
Big, big thanks to Kat, my right-hand woman.
Woohoo!
The brains behind the entire operation. So thank you again. The whole AmpLive team, not in here, but thank you all. And as Zachary said, we'll see you guys at the bar. We're going to the Marquee up at the top of the Marriott. It's right across the street. If you bring your SummitLive badge, it's good for 2 free drinks.
Woo!
Thank you again. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, can I just let's do this real quick.
Of course.
That was excellent.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
It's unlikely I did.